In the first 2 years, we've made over $7 million on just royalties.
So what exactly is Claynosaurz?
I was working at these companies late night on a Friday, only to realize that by the following Tuesday, it didn't matter. I've seen supervisors bust their ass, and when the show is over, even the studio that they work for is like, man, thanks, let's do it all over again next Monday. So early on, we gave all the artists equity. We basically split the pie, and
For the first time ever in the history of animation, an artist can make a beautiful walk cycle and sell that as a digital piece of art. We've had some collectibles that have sold for just about $100,000.
All right, so welcome everyone to our second episode with Nick Cabana and Jack. Jack is head of product and Nick is our creative director and co-founder of Claynosaurz. But what is Claynosaurz? You guys do NFT, plushies, social media content, events, Discord. Like what the hell? What is Claynosaurz?
yeah, that's a fair question. Really, we're attempting to become a global transmedia brand. Transmedia meaning that we tell stories in so many different mediums, and the stories don't necessarily have to be linear. We can tell hyper relatable short form content on Instagram, and we can explore longer form on YouTube, and they don't necessarily have to be super connected, aside from a few kind of like key rules. And for us, like the idea of a franchise is kind of like is a character brand with multiple expressions through time, ages, and stages, really. You can age with an audience, you can tell all these different sorts of stories, and you're flexible enough to evolve over time. And you see the same thing with like, Transformers and those types of brands too.
So transmedia, is that something you guys made up? Are you the first one to do this, or were there brands before
I
you?
think it's a buzzword, but the beauty of it is that today we know that, media consumption is not linear, right? Kids are not like watching and then just watching. They are watching, and then when they stop watching, they play the game related to the show that they were just doing, and then they are playing with toys and so on and so on. So transmedia brand means that basically we are there where the audience is consuming content. So we are building this IP, obviously, on short form content, soon episodic content, but we're also developing a game. We are releasing product. And basically, all those touch points are entry door into the ecosystem of Claynosaurz, right? So some user will start with physical product, and the physical product will drag them into the TV show, into the game. Other will start with the game. So when we talk about a transmedia brand, it's an ecosystem where every touch point is connected and people can easily translate from one to another. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but when you started, did you have that picture in mind, or did you start just with the collectibles?
No, I think the point has always been to build a transmedia brand. Collectibles was a segue for us to basically de-risk the IP in itself and directly testing that IP with real consumer, right? When you release a digital collectible collection, you have a direct feedback. When that collection sell out, you have a direct feedback that what you are doing is going in the right direction. But when Nick and the team started Claynosaurz, the grand scheme, the grand plan was always to build an IP that could bend and flex to the different type of touch points that the world offers
Yeah.
today.
I mean, in a weird way, it's almost a metaphor for clay, but
Yeah.
the brand was always built to be flexible. When we design these things, like, we had these like dreams of like a lot of us grew up with like Masters of the Universe and things like that. And so we had these dreams of making like this dinosaur brand where they wear stuff and gear and it was very kind of like Dungeons and Dragons centric. Over time, it's evolved more into it's really about the characters. Um, but we designed it to be hyper flexible and to show dinosaurs in a way you hadn't seen them before. Is very collector centric in the sense that there's like you can have a stegosaur and have like 10 different colors and 8 different patterns, so you can have all these different types of kind of like variances on the same character.
And you build them
But
for being extremely toyetic as well,
we
right?
wanted something that was toyetic And so that was a big part of the strategy. And toys can mean anything. Of course, they can mean like these little plushies here, but it could also mean digital toys. Of course, we started our kind of our story with digital collectibles, but toys can be anything. And so that's the sort of brand we were building. Like we just knew that it was a brand that could appeal to many people and that could do many different things and tell so many different stories.
Yeah, but you guys still don't have a hero character. So how is this replicable to a bigger brand? Like, how can you make a Pocahontas or a Snow White into a collectible? Can you make 10,000 variations of Peter Pan or Tinkerbell?
Yeah, so we actually do more and more. We're starting to focus on the four hero characters, so you can find them on the website. The website is being redone, and I can go grab a poster in the other room. But like the four characters in that Game Loft trailer. There's like the Red Rex. There's the Yellow Stego. So those are more or less like the four best friends. So we do have main characters, but the way we treat it is it's similar to like if you think of a collectible brand, a little bit like Funko Pop, right? Like they have, who knows at this point, like 20,000 different variations of a character, and they sell that as a collectible kind of like art toy that you put on your desk. But they're the real characters is that one design of the character. Same thing is true with like Lego. Lego over the last recent years, they've really kind of like establish well who the main characters are in their universe, but for the most part there's still thousands of characters, and our approach was to allow people to have a digital extension of their self, so like a digital identity, which a lot of artists do nowadays anyways. Like their avatars are oftentimes drawings of their own characters. And if you think of where the digital ecosystem is heading, is like people just live online. COVID was definitely a big part of that, but like it's just happening naturally. So people are definitely adopting like digital identities.
Even though I think in the future there are probably different avenues as well to distribute digital collectibles that are no, profile pictures that basically people use as a self-representation. There are many, many things that we can do. Digital collectibles is just like, for us, is a new medium, right? And the way you use that medium to your advantage as a brand can take many, many forms. You could distribute behind the scene digital collectibles. You could distribute sketches of the early stage of the brand as collectibles, right? It's just like when we launched, Claynosaurz, the profile picture, this avatar was the best tool for the brand at that moment. I think in the future, if we incubate new IP, which is
About to do, yeah.
part of the plan, we will always explore what is the best medium for that brand to touch its audience. Is it a profile pictures? Is it behind the scene? Is it, there are many, many things that you can do.
Cool. So I think like the real question is like, would this be a model that like someone like Disney could employ or recreate? Is it something that is flexible enough for them to use as a go-to-market strategy? If you think of like even a brand like, I don't know, like Snow White or Lion King. And yeah, for sure it is, because really the way we saw like the release of digital collectibles is kind of like our first go-to-market or our first box office event. So that is kind of how we get our first patrons. It just so happens that, and when you have one of those collectibles, we kind of consider it a passport into our ecosystem, right? It just so happens that each of those characters is different and unique. So it's almost like every concert ticket you would buy or every movie ticket you would buy is an individual ticket and can be tracked by our company. If I think of Snow White, well, they could have said, hey, we're going to sell 10,000 tickets and they all look like one of the dwarves, but a different version of the dwarves. It doesn't change the fact that in the movie, it's just the seven dwarves, right? Like, and all the other ones are at our disposal to use in the future if we want to. And the cool thing is, if someone starts to adopt a specific character that they collected, which is unique, as their digital identity, as a company, we're constantly tracking how they interact with others, who they are as a person or at least online. And sometimes we actually feature those people in our content that is a reflection or a parallel with how they are as participants in our ecosystem or online or whatever. And so there's like so many tools that you can kind of that you now have as at your disposal as a creator, as a creative house to kind of leverage other people's characters or the digital extension of their self, right? Their digital identities.
Yeah, it's really the beauty of it is that those collectibles become like a one-to-one connection between the creators and the fans. And that link, that emotional connection between creators and fans is very, very important. And if you nurture it correctly, it can become a superpower for the brand.
So we've essentially featured people like, some of our original collectors in our content like all the time, and it's a really special thing for them to be featured. And sometimes we inject a piece of their personality in there, and it's kind of like a fun surprise. You can do fun things as a company, like add that as a reward loop. Like, hey, if you're co-creating content with us, well, we'll feature you being
Your
like
avatar, yeah.
yeah, like a pink stegosaur with these specific dots or whatever in our content on our Instagram channel or on our other platforms. And the beauty of that is you're essentially creating, which is really important for creatives to understand, is when you align the incentives with your early fan base, they become a decentralized marketing army and they will be your flywheel. So we keep our socials as organic as possible. When we went to market with Instagram, we didn't do a single boost and we were hitting millions of views early on. Sure, the brand has to be good. So I think that's a part of it and the content's relatable. But the reality of it is our initial audience is really incentivized to help you flywheel because they have early inclusion, because they have the first collectible. So obviously they want the brand to do well, but also they kind of like
They care.
they
They
care a
care.
lot. They're part of the story. And it's a different way of building, and you're kind of redesigning how we look at the relationship of creators and the fans or a brand and the early fans. Best way I can put it is kind of like if you find like a new recording artist, like I don't know, like at the time like Post Malone or something that was doing their first albums on SoundCloud, and you're like, I like this artist. That's awesome. One day this artist is going to be popular. And you kind of pay for their first song. And maybe you go to like their first small shows at a bar or something. And then 10 years later, they're on top of the world and they're like a huge recording artist.
I was there.
The only thing you can do is you're a fan and you're like, yeah, I was there. Like, trust me, I was there. And I told you guys this person would be big. You don't have a relationship with that brand or that recording artist. The only thing you have is kind of like the memory. But had you tokenized the
Experience.
initial experience or the initial go to market, you know, you could have sold 10,000 versions of the first song as a way to fundraise for the first album. And anyone forever that owns one of those songs will be invited at the red carpet events, will be sent all these special kind of like reward loops or things that create foster a better relationship with that recording artist. And that recording artist can forever say, you were there at the beginning and you were a part of the story and you are a part of the story forevermore. And that's like our superpower. And it's something that we leverage all the time.
Yeah, I noticed when I was digging through your journey, you gamify the whole system and the design infrastructure and how you incentivize both your employees, both the content, not content, but collectible holders and the audience. Like the whole tree point in your infrastructure is so well designed that is like that can come from a single man or a woman, a single person.
No,
Like,
it's
so how did you find all these advisors and how did you know where to look for them? And how did you know who do you look for? Where do you start?
okay. So, oh man. So Jack is a key part of this story too, because we found each other. I met him actually at my first ever Web3/NFT conference. It was basically love at first sight. He knew what we were doing. This was before we sold our first ever collectibles. Um, but basically leverage relationships and build real relationships with people. And I know it sounds dumb, but it's a real thing. But I think our product spoke for itself at the time. Like the characters are great. People believed in it. Of course, we had some kind of like first mover advantage here, but we've been lucky. A lot of, the industry, like you pointed out last week, is basically falling apart, and a lot of people are looking for solutions. And what we're doing raises a lot of eyebrows. So we have a lot of people that come into the mix and like, we would love to be a part of your board of advisors. And sometimes those people have other friends that can help out. And so we've been really lucky to be in touch with people that have been, head of licensing at like Mattel and Hasbro, or head, general manager for Hasbro Studios, or Gaetano, which was one
Yeah.
of our first advisors. That was through a family friend, but he was the ex president of Rovio at the time at which they were making the Angry Birds movie. So as creatives, it was really nice to have that protection. I also grew up with my CEO, who is my best friend, who came from an investment background and is probably like
He's a
I
f-
he's a
is a gem.
superstar. He's a
But I
superstar.
think that the beauty of it and what Nick and Andrew, the CEO, managed to do is that their energy and passion are extremely contagious. And that vision that they share with people resonate very, very quickly. And so those partners, those advisors understand very quickly where we want to go, understand also what's broken within the current industry and what solution we bring to the table. I mean, the solution is not perfect. We are not saying that we cracked the nuts and we have the perfect solution, but the idea and the direction that we take as a company is pretty clear to everyone internally, which is beautiful. And when you have like founders that are passionate like that, it's super easy to get people to help you because people feel that it's a genuine envy to challenge the industry and that it's not driven by money only. Obviously, we are a company, money is part of the ecosystem, but it's about finding a better solution for incubating cool IPs that people want to consume. And I think that passion and that energy is very contagious. So speaking for myself, met Nick 2 years ago, resonated with Claynosaurz even before, but meeting the guy and putting like a face on the vision trigger something in me. And I think this is beautiful. And it's something that they managed to replicate multiple times with people, from licensing to, production company to people, creators joining us in the team today and working with us and for us. That's beautiful.
And we now even have like Pokemon's lawyers.
And we have Pokemon's lawyers.
But look, incentivizing the artists was an absolute no-brainer. This is a company built by artists. We're in a really lucky position that now we have a lot of help from guys that have also built startups or understand business. But from my perspective, it's like, dude, I was working at these companies, you name it, Rodeo, Sony, all those frame store. And a lot of times I was a little bit disillusioned by the process and by I'll be asked to work 80 hours and the best that happens is the carrot on a stick of like, I guess, career progression if the industry doesn't collapse. Uh, and I'll be working late night on a Friday only to realize that by the following Tuesday, it didn't matter. Internally, there'll be retakes because of corporate lethargy. And then the next Friday, it'll have been sent to the clients, and the clients will have their own ideas because nobody wanted to show early, all that kind of stuff. And I've been a supervisor. I've seen supervisors like bust their ass on a show, destroy their health, and when the show is over, even the studio that they work for is like, man, thanks. Let's do it all over again next Monday for the next 6 months. They have no ownership. They represent 80% of what we see on screen, and they have zero ownership of what is shown on screen. And oftentimes, there's so much money involved that all the big decisions are made by corporate in an attempt to de-risk, when in fact it should be the artists who have spent their whole years understanding what it is the people actually want, right? And what resonates with people. And I think that was a really powerful kind of story for me. And so early on, we gave all the artists equity, and we basically split the pie, and it's a way that we operate, and it has changed the lives of basically everybody on this team. It is something they would have never seen in the traditional model, but most of the artists on our team, including some new ones, because we always keep ESOP to be able to sometimes give extra equities to those who deserve it. Um, they all own a piece of this franchise. And so, we try not to do overtime, but when it happens or when you're going through a rush, you feel like, you know what, like I'm building my baby
Yeah,
and
you're doing it for yourself, so it's very different. You're
everything I
not
put
fighting
into
for corporate, you are fighting for something
yeah.
that you own in a way. And so,
Yeah, it's
when you
more
give
meaningful.
autonomy, yeah,
And
when you give autonomy and accountability to people, and they understand that they are fighting for themselves, which is very important. They are okay to work more, they're okay to grind, they are okay to do the hours, and it's not about overtime. It's just about, okay, I'm doing that for myself because I think it's the
there's a
future.
sense of like we are all like building this together, and everyone's so glad to show up to work every day, and it's a really powerful tool, and it's one that we want to recreate for other satellite teams where we would foster them. I feel like I'm getting ahead of all these questions that you're gonna have, but we basically want to recreate this kind of success story for other teams because so many creatives today are sitting on amazing ideas that most studio won't take a risk on. But why not let the audience decide what they want to consume or not? And I
Yeah.
think that's the secret sauce, and then reward the crap out of the artist for it.
Yeah.
Right.
I was gonna jump on so many questions while you were talking, so I'm gonna try to remember what was the most
Yeah, Nick
important
speaks too
one.
much. I know.
I
I
speak a
know.
lot, and Jack is always like, Nick, you speak too much. And I'm like, I know. I'm sorry.
No, no, it's
That
all good.
It's passion.
but yeah, when you mention overtime in animation industry, it's not like in startup it's rainbows and roses. Like you have overtime as well. It's just more meaningful. But
Exactly. It's way more meaningful.
I'm curious. I listened to a ton of podcasts to prepare for this talk, and you mentioned how the whole 2023 was like no royalties, no salaries, um, overtime, crazy hours. So I'm curious, how much of your own money did you invest in that? And yeah, so that is the question. What does it take to build this business?
So we were really ambitious with our first collection. It was a 3D collection. We were rendering 10,000 of these characters. We didn't do it on Unreal. We probably should have done it on Unreal. But a lot of the artists work for essentially like sweat equity. And so most of the team that
Explain
we
what
got brought,
that means.
so sweat equity is like, well, you're working for a piece of the pie. We do when you guys do a short film together as a team for free, you kind of all own the short film together, and whatever happens, you share that piece, right? You're fighting for you're working for your equity. So that's how we had approached the first, collection, but it cost about $100,000 to render. And so I think that, in retrospect, we probably would have never done it that way today. It just happened that over time it became this really ambitious thing. And so a few of us put money there. But within a couple days, on our release, we made $1.3 million. So that was instantly,
That was in
Yeah.
2022.
that was in 2022.
And
Yeah.
2022, a lot of royalties, so that generated like a little war chest, which isn't big for industry, Web3 industry. I think 2023 was a different period where we were grinding, working on product and so on. I think the commitment of the team members was once again sweat equity, the fact that a lot of people joined the team by diminishing the salary without being underpaid, right? There is no underpaid people at Claynosaurz, but the first employees had to reduce a little bit their expectation and putting more hours.
Yeah.
in exchange for shares and so on and so on. And it proved to be working quite well because
Mhm.
we didn't fire anyone. We retained most of the employee that start working with us,
And we just grew.
and we
Yeah.
just grew. And today we are a very nimble and efficient SWAT team. I mean, Andrew liked to call us the SWAT team because everyone is, as a little soldier. I don't like the war analogy, but everyone is a little, SWAT person that knows exactly what he brings to the table. And, the fact that the vision is shared among everyone makes us very efficient together.
But it's
Yeah.
it's like you say, it was startup vibes. And
Yeah.
it's like, how do you protect this brand? And how do we understand that, hey, the first year or two, it's not going to be perfect. No one is paying themselves big salaries, but here's what we're working towards. And that was the plan, and it's worked out really well.
And to that point, I think there is one thing that you guys did very well, and we do well as a company. It's celebrated the win that we had, right? 2022, 2023, until 2024, we had a couple of nice little wins. And the fact that as a team, we took the time to celebrate that correctly by going out to dinner and so on and so on. It sounds stupid, but it's those little things that change the perspective on the entire team regarding the journey, right? The journey is an enjoyable moment. We are spending a lot of time together. So if you never pause to appreciate what you have and what you personally succeed, what Andrew succeed, what we succeed as a team,
Yeah.
that wouldn't be as good.
Yeah, and we try to give as many people ownership as possible. Like we try, it's not always perfect, but we try to avoid letting people feel like cogs in the wheel. Like everybody is welcome to come in and ideate and pitch and be a part of that story. So it's a big part of that.
Yeah, but I'm thinking now, you're not an animator, not even a business person. You're a great salesperson. If you can convince a small group of people to invest 20 or 30 Ks to maybe successful NFT. NFT, what's that? That's a scam. So kudos to you for knowing how to pitch your ideas.
I think what was different from Claynosaurz, and before working for Claynosaurz, I was, a Web3 person. I mean, I was investing in those projects and so on. So I have the double perception. I think what resonated with me with Claynosaurz is the fact that it's artists doing something for themselves, which was very refreshing at the time. And initially Nick and the founders and the team managed to protect that idea that is artists doing something for themselves and now gain the reputation within Web3 and outside that they are good actor. Web3 is a fucking wild west, right? It's full of snakes and you have people that are rugging and so on and so on. And so reputation of Web3 at large is a very difficult beast to navigate, but Claynosaurz managed to build and narrate a beautiful story that now start to resonate with people and that is taking a parallel track from what Web3 could be, right? And what I say could be is that not all projects on Web3 are rugs or scammers, or whatever, far from it. But I mean, there is so much noise around Web3, so much scam that it's difficult to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And what you guys did very well is to protect that story and protect the fact that it's artists working for themselves, going against the big industry and finding a better way to incubate IPs and take the community with it.
Yeah, I think, and I've had this conversation with so many kind of people interested in this. Dragana is like, and they all say the same things, like NFTs is a scam. I hear Cartoon Brew talk about this stuff all the time. Um, that's not necessarily true. I think in every nascent industry, shit happens, right? Think about the early days of
The internet, yeah.
of animation studios, even now we're freaking out because MPC closed its doors and they weren't paying the guys in India. That used to be a normal thing 15 years ago, where these small studios would open up even in Montreal and decide not to pay people. Like that when there's an emerging industry, you always have bad actors. What we wanted to do is come into the space and say, we're going to leverage this insane technology, a technology that we think is going to be standardized across the board in the future, and leverage it for all the opportunities it offers. It's not going to be perfect at first, but we are going to be a part of the narrative shift and the story. And we also saw a huge gap where we're like, hey, we are the only, like, one of the few teams that understand how to incubate IP for real, that understand quality. And we saw that in Web3 and in NFTs, there was a huge gap in quality and of good actors. And we're like, hey, if we do this right, we have substantial first movers advantage. Um, and it was like 3 years ago that we were making that decision, maybe a little bit more than 3 years ago, but we were already thinking about where is the industry going because of streaming? Where is the industry going because box office COVID essentially like sped up the fact that box office is dying. Attention spans are reducing at a rapid pace, so it's all short form content. We were asking ourselves all these questions, and we're like, hey, there's actually a way to kind of rethink all that stuff, and Web3 was a big part of that discussion. Salesman, yeah, it was tough at the beginning to convince a lot of other crazy people to do this with us, but I think they were all excited. You know, there was a lot of trust with the team, and everybody was excited to build these stories and these characters. That's like really what it came down to, and and we weren't like bonkers in like the way where it wasn't like a huge risk in the sense that like we understood the metrics of the market and we're like, hey, if we time this properly, we're making a safe assumption that at the low end of the spectrum, this is probably how much money we'll make in that release. A little bit like how you project for a box office or something like that. So it wasn't like we just threw money at it blindly, but if there's always a risk. So yeah.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about your beginnings. You mentioned how you leveraged Twitter as a platform for building a community, but without still having a product. And I was
Yeah.
going like crazy through your Twitter history, and I couldn't find like what did you guys do? Like I only saw
Yeah.
replies or interaction with other creators and posting few memes here and there, but like how did that
Yeah.
lead
Okay.
to engage Discord community? Like what
This
am I missing here?
This is such a good question. By the way, Twitter, it's really hard to go back in time for Twitter. Like it's tough to see all the older posts. I'm gonna send you some so that like if you wanted to show it, you can. Our What we were doing the first 6 months before we released this thing is we were extremely transparent, and it was a lot of building in the open and behind the scenes footage, how we're building our collection, concept art, how we think of a lot like how indie games
Yeah.
typically do it. And we were engaging with other big accounts. So on Twitter, it's always important to like engage and treat it like this sort of mini type of like World of Warcraft or metaverse. Like it's how you grow your account, become a familiar face. As a founder, I was in what we call the Twitter trenches, but I was interacting with all the other good actors and people that we thought had shared values and other like let's call them like micro influencers. But really, we were showing a lot of making of. We were showing all the technology that was going into building this collection and showing a lot of the how much we cared about the process and how much we cared about the quality of these characters and what we were thinking. So part of our ethos and the way we build brands and the way we will be building other brands with other creators is the early development cycle, and that is to say, yeah, you don't have much of a product. You're kind of like building, you're thinking about world building and you're thinking about characters, is actually a super weapon to bring people into the story and for them to want to see you win. Early inclusion, like
Yeah.
that's what it comes down to.
And that early inclusion comes also with emotional engagement, meaning that the people that have been following the project for a very, very long time, that have seen the behind the scene, have seen the first post, they are part of the story because they interact with you, they discuss with you, they give ID, they share opinions, and so on and so on. And so with that back and forth comes almost a co-creation state that attach people to the IP. And when you are emotionally engaged with an IP, you are less eager to go find a replacement. So you have like almost like a glue that glued you to your IP. And I think this is something that you did pretty well at the beginning is build that community that feels engaged in the story, engaged in the world
Oh
building.
man, I am in like hundreds of chat rooms still today, but it's really kind of like you want to give people a feeling of like And it's the same thing of them seeing even on YouTube like an influencer starting from nothing and becoming something, whether it's like a cooking influencer like Joshua Eisman. It's like one day he's got an awesome kitchen and then he's releasing a cookbook, and that's really exciting to the people that were following when he had 500 followers, right?
Mm.
Same process here. And that's where people get like emotionally tied, where they like, I saw it being built before my eyes. And oftentimes Hollywood is like, we're going to build this, we're going to spend millions of dollars building something for like 3, 4 years. We're not going to show anyone anything, and then we're going to release it and hope it's sticky.
And often it's a miss.
Yeah, and it's a hit or miss. AAA games do this all
It's
the
the
time.
same. Ubisoft, for example, spent I don't know how many millions building a pirate game, open world pirate game. They
That was
spent
a
10
huge.
years, 10 years building it. They release it, and there is like, I don't know, like 5,000 concurrent player, which is nothing. It's just like money wasted, right?
Yeah.
Where if they took the time to, you know, do test and expose that early on to an audience, they would have found that it doesn't work. It doesn't stick.
Yeah, we were doing like, voting sessions on colors we should use,
Oh,
patterns. Like, yes,
wow.
you have ideas. I want to give a special shout out to the Bunderkin team, by the way, because they are doing, and I'm sure you know who they are, but they are doing something really special, and they are building in the open. And most recently, they've opened their YouTube channel. They're doing open casting sessions. I think the world is heading in a community-driven model. And it doesn't mean that you have to have a gigantic fan base in the beginning, but having 4,000 to 10,000 super fans is so that are actively participating is so much more powerful than having like 200,000 kind of fake followers that don't actually participate and whatever, right? Which actually you're seeing with the legacy brands, like maybe their accounts have a big following, but when they post something, they get like 10 likes, right? Like no one actually cares. And
Yeah,
so that's
because the following came because of
it's
the
inorganic.
offline brand, not because of the social media.
Yeah, and they don't feel like they're a part of that story.
Yeah.
And by the way, the another secret sauce that we have where it's like, well, we monetize that early development cycle, almost like having a bunch of patrons that are willing to offer their help. So not only are they collecting our collectibles, and of course we make royalties when these collectibles trade, but a lot of them might also be startup founders. A lot of them might also have like some know-how in different industries. And that's actually another way that we got a lot of big advisors where these are people that were engaging in what we were doing. They were also crypto curious, but they actually came with a massive Rolodex, and they want to see us win because they're already a part of our story. And so that's another kind of like thing to consider
Yeah.
when you're building in Web3 is like, those crazy stories are amazing.
I think the elephant in the room regarding that as well is the energy that the founder had to put. I mean, you as a person had to be, in the trenches, like you say, like on a daily basis. There is like no pause whatsoever. I can say it, he can't, but I can from the side because, he is, as a person, attached to that brand so closely that he had for months and for days, like be online, responsive, reactive to the community and to everyone because he's attached to the success of that project. And because with what we were saying earlier, Web3, the beginning of Web3 was so tarnished by reputation that you had to be the face and you had to be, out
A
there and
familiar
showing a
face.
familiar face.
Yeah.
And that has been, not tough on you, but that takes a lot of
Yeah.
time and dedication, right?
But it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It hasn't been easy, but it's been a lot of fun. But I would say that model is not necessarily sustainable, that you would always have like a face of the brand, right? It's like let the brand be the brand, and,
Yeah.
and the characters, people are gonna love the characters over time as building with a Web3 layer kind of evolves, and what we're trying to build ourselves through the platform, that
Yeah.
we're incubating is that model will shift drastically. And then you'll the big picture here is to create an ecosystem where you can tokenize IP, and Jack can get into what that means later, but you can also eventually kind of securitize IP, which means an artist could present their IP in a platform, and through blockchain technology, and all of it would be automated, people that are taking a bet or wanting to kind of support that IP actually own shares in that IP. just by owning a specific kind of digital, passport, if you will. And the opportunities there when we get there are insane. Can you imagine kind of pitching that your go-to-market is if you buy like the first movie ticket or the first 20,000 movie tickets of this movie, you actually own a piece of the IP. Like that will change how we think about go-to-market strategies for new content and new IP.
Yeah, the way I understood Cleanotopia, almost like a virtual Disneyland, and your Claynosaurz is your Disney band, and you're going to
Kind
different
of.
places. Is that
That's not a bad way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, that's a really good way of looking at it because yeah, with that band, which is that collectible, right? Like which you can have on your phone. If as a company, I can track it. I know where that exists. It's not like, if you sell like a digital sticker once, or if you sell even like, a plushie, although we have digital loops here. But if you sell a plushie, like once someone owns it, as a company, you don't, that's it, it's done. Like there's no relationship building. But for us with the digital, it's like, well, we can constantly airdrop or reward that digital, but we can say, hey, anyone with a red T-Rex gets a 50% discount on our eShop. Right?
And
We can do those things.
yeah, and there our strategy is also, how can we expand the community by distributing collectibles throughout the universe without asking people to invest a massive amount of money to own one of the original Claynosaurz, right? We have a very tight-knit collector base, but for example, like Nick said, when we sell a plushie, that plushie come with a digital collectible. That collectible is bound to the plushie and basically become your badge. So it's very important for us also to start distributing those collectibles because they become way for us to track, like you mentioned, people and their interaction. If you watch the show, we know that you watch the show. If you purchase a plushie, we know that you purchase a plushie. And then at the later stage, we could say, okay, I want to target everyone that watched the show, purchase a plushie, and offer those person a behind the scene of our next coming episode. And we can do it. And we can do it without relying on the big tech, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and so on and so on. We can do it because we almost like attached invisible collectibles to everything that we do, and it allows us to communicate directly with the audience, and the audience is the one that benefits from that relationship. You know what I mean? It's far more efficient and far more beautiful than just like the old model in a way.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit like sci-fi, but we are so close to that being, kind of standardized.
Yeah.
We talk to massive toy companies that are already thinking about doing this themselves. We've had so many conversations with studios that talk the same language. Like, how can I fix this issue that we have with like retail versus the fans or whatever? And how do we create an actual communication loop that is a net positive for both parties?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
not extractive.
Definitely.
It sounds exactly like sci-fi. So there was a huge leap between you buy your plushie and you can track your customers. It sounds a bit scary.
I know you can track the asset.
No, you don't. And I don't want people to get scary. And sometimes those terms can sound a little bit scary and 1984 kind of. But basically, every collectibles. You need to imagine that every collectibles have an ID, okay? So you know where it is, but you don't know who owns it. So if it's in my wallet as a user, I don't know who has it, but I can track the assets. So the assets.
You mean location or?
No, not location based. It's just because I know who owns that asset. When I say who, it's not the person. I know which wallet own that thing. I can build an experience that says
which abstracted account
with abstract you as a person, your identity, and I can say I want that wallet and that wallet to have access to that content, or I want that wallet and that wallet to have 50% discount in the next plushie drop that we in. Oh, I want that wallet, and that wallet to have
get
access.
an invitation to the red carpet event.
Exactly. But I don't know who you are as a person. I just know who you are as a wallet. I hate the word wallet because it sounds, monetary, which is not. It's just a container for your digital collectibles.
It's like an equipment bag.
Yeah, it's an equipment bag in a game.
RPG game.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the best way I can put it.
And for example, we were discussing earlier about NFTs and so on and so on. I hate those words because those words are technical. They mean shit for most people, and I think they're gonna die in a couple of years. When you think about it today, YouTube, you don't care of the tech protocol behind YouTube. You don't care if it's UDP, HTTP, or TCP protocol, right? You don't care. But YouTube become a medium. You produce content directly for YouTube. It's going to be the same for digital collectibles. The name NFT, the word NFT is meant to disappear completely, and people will think about collectibles and digital collectibles, and you will produce content directly as collectibles. And that's why I firmly believe that it's a new medium in a way, a medium that will be adopted by big brands in the future. But today they can't implement it because it's too risky in terms of PR, right? If Netflix tomorrow decide to distribute digital collectibles to everyone that watches a show on their platform, it's going to backfire a lot for them, right? So we are in a position where we can take those risks. We can lead the way and show what can be done with that technology without taking too much risk, because we are trying to, onboard people through time in a frictionless manner. When I say frictionless, is that you don't need to be a tech genius to redeem a collectible from a plushie. You just need your phone, you tap your phone on the plushie, and it's done.
And it exists in your sticker book, and essentially that sticker book is used as an access point for all the things that we can offer.
How do you track from there, from having someone's wallet, knowing who, or blah, let's retrace. How do you trace from QR
we don't know
code?
who we see the sticker book. We see the sticker book, but we don't know who owns it.
How do you go from sticker book?
Yeah.
From sticker book on a toy to tracking their watch time during a TV episode?
So it's a very good question. For example, and I will try to explain it in a non-technical way.
Please do.
Yes.
This is why I brought Jack.
So today, for example, YouTube as a platform is a black box when you try to track user consumption, right? You can see if an account has interacted with the video by liking and commenting, but you don't know what they watch and so on and so on. So there are multiple stuff that you can do to circumvent that. You can obviously embed a YouTube video directly into your website, into your platform, and have the tracking mechanism directly onto your platform. But we are thinking one step further than that. I think in the future, we'll have our own distribution channels that allow us to token gate, so to block certain content if you have a certain badge, if you have a certain plushie, and so on and so on. And that is going to be extremely interesting for us because it's a way of making sure content find the audience in the right time and in the right place. Does that make sense?
Almost like having your own platform for watching.
Well, that's part of the plan in the long run. It's not a next year plan. It's a little bit further than that. But obviously, we are working on a platform where creators, fans, and partners are meeting each other and are working together to incubate the next big IPs, are betting together on which IP will be the next. And the beauty of it is that when you build that network of IP, you can allow people to go from one IP to another. And loyal people from one IP can shift to another IP when they aged up the IP or whatever. And this is really beautiful. And it's today something that all streaming platforms are not doing, and they can't, because people have no loyalty with streaming platform. You go on Netflix, you browse, you don't find anything, you are zombie scrolling for 1 hour, and then maybe you start doing a show, and then you switch to Disney. You cancel on Netflix, you watch on Disney, and so on and so on. If you manage to retain people from one IP to another, by making sure that the collectibles that they get from one IP can be transferred to the second one, you build a beautiful machine. And what I'm getting ahead of myself.
Head of product.
But you get the gist of it, right?
Yeah, I have to say, from not from an artist point of view, but more from an investor point of view, browsing through your Discord and listening to you guys now seem almost like insider trading. Knowing what you guys are planning seems like a stupid decision not to buy one of your Claynosaurs.
Well,
Seriously.
these are
It's
not
not
secure.
financial advice. We cannot give financial advice. But I think
And so like they're really just collectibles. Whatever
Yeah.
happens to the price, it's like we have no control over that. And they're not necessarily related to announcements or things like that. They're mostly, they're the kind of proposition for collectibles in general is the more the brand accrues provenance and visibility, usually, the more there's a demand for collectibles because more people know the brand, and that's usually like that's kind of like the thought process there. It just so happens that because these are digital collectibles that can exist in your digital sticker book, we can kind of like offer reward loops to those stickers, right? So a special access somewhere, like you said, it's almost like a digital Disneyland band. We can offer discounts to the store, all these things, and of course, we can offer access into the way we build in the open and casting sessions. Like, okay, your character can open, but it's not necessarily an investment or a security.
it's definitely not a security, that's for sure. But when you think about it, imagine today owning one of the first figurine of Star Wars, the original 1000 Star Wars figurine. Because of Star Wars legacy, previous legacy, if I may say, but because of Star Wars, that collectibles accrue value through time because of the IP grew, because the IP is well known across the world, and so on and so on. So our collectibles will follow us no matter what. They are the birthright of Claynosaurz as a company, and they will always play a role into the ecosystem that we are building and the platform that we are releasing in the coming months. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a good way.
I want to go back to your Twitter strategy just a bit. What was your thought process behind building the volcano emoji and memes? Weren't you afraid memes would ruin your brand image?
No, actually, okay, that's a really good question, and I can speak in a language for the animators here. The first one is your brand needs to be identifiable through some sort of symbolism or symbol instantly. If I give you the emoji of volcano, we didn't want it to be dinosaurs. That would have been too obvious. Volcano kind of felt like a world. In Web3 right now, we're probably one of the we're considered like a tier 1 IP brand in Web3, which means we compete against, you might have heard, like Bored Apes, there's Doodles, there's Azuki and Pudgy Penguins. Each of those brands have a symbol that is a talisman or representative of that brand. And it's an easy way to get your audience to kind of be an extra flywheel, because when they use a volcano, they're signaling that they're talking about Claynosaurz. So that was like an important play. Memes. whoever like leans into memes owns the world. We're seeing, even people like Elon lean heavy into memes. But if you look, really, we believe in UGC, so user generated content is one of our biggest strategies, and it's really what it comes down to is allowing fans to create their own fandom experience and find their niches and lean heavy into it. Probably the best example I can give you of a brand that has done that so well is SpongeBob. So,
That's true.
You told me SpongeBob would be what it is today. Like 15 years ago, I would have been like, bullshit. Like, this thing, what, is gonna last like 4 years or whatever. SpongeBob today is a mimetic superpower because fans take it and lean into a niche that they believe it represents. Squidward is someone that's just like, ugh, like a day in the life as an employee or a business owner or whatever, and that speaks to so many people. And there are millions of GIF views that lean into that. And each character in SpongeBob, the internet has made it their own, and that is an absolute flywheel superpower. But why is that important? It's because the brand, instead of being a brand that is just for kids and is a brand that is like boxed in by limitations, it's actually a brand that has so many different expressions, which means you can tap into a much more global audience because to a certain, to the 35 plus year old man, for example, it's representative of this idea. To an 18-year-old to 20-year-old, certain demographics, it means something different. And so really it's about allowing people to make it their own. And that's where the world is heading, is like memes are such a powerful tool to express something that is hyper relatable in a way that's so hard to do in longer form content, right? It's kind of like an atomized, really powerful version of an idea.
Knowing also that you are very careful at the balance between short form content and memes. Not everything that we do is meme related. There is a balance to be found. When you look at Instagram, the vignettes that we do, most of them are no memes,
Yeah, most
right?
of them are evergreen.
Evergreen content and so on and so on. And I think it's finding the right balance, because if the brand was all memes all the time, it would create so much noise and inconsistency that you would then understand what Claynosaurz is as a brand, right? So it's surfing on trends and making sure you generate visibility with those flashy little memes that will make people love, but at the same time rely on evergreen content to make sure the brand is understandable and successful in the long run.
It's an extra tool for familiarity and proliferation. And another fun stat for SpongeBob, by the way, is kids today. That is to say, like the 9 to 14-year-old demographic. There was this like amazing stat I was looking up the other day, and there is a huge portion of those kids that consider themselves fans of SpongeBob. They know the lore. They consider themselves almost experts in the lore. They haven't seen a single episode. Not one episode. Think about what that means. That means that they became fans through the atomized content or through the memes. They got familiar with the brand. They deep dove on something like Wikipedia, right? Before SpongeBob, but they didn't have the intent. Like
SpongeBob became culture.
They didn't need to consume the long form episodic to actually enjoy the brand and for it to mean something to them. And I think that if you can leverage that, not leverage it, if you can foster that as a brand and allow for it to happen, that is such a huge advantage in an ecosystem where you're competing against millions of minutes of content that is like happening on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram any given week, right? You're giving yourself an advantage. Another example, I know I talk a lot, but another example is My Little Pony. So My Little Pony, they had this thing called the Bronies, and this was like dudes that were like super into My Little Pony, and they were making all these like custom t-shirts. And we have advisors that come from Hasbro, and they were explaining like management at Hasbro was like initially had an allergic reaction to that. We can't let My Little Pony turn into kind of this, and it's kind of like against the narrative that we've built for My Little Pony. And then there was another side of the table that was like, no, like let that happen. Like this actually might
it's generating
right. This might actually turn the brand into more than it was meant to be. Lo and behold, that part of My Little Pony is now $1 billion part of vertical of My Little Pony, the Bronies. The point being is it became a meme, and that's okay because it doesn't take away from the linear track. Linear track is like what you as a company has said is canon. Okay, the TV show is canon, but comic books can be fun and can do whatever they want. Memes can be fun, and that's okay.
Yeah, in other words, don't take yourself too seriously.
Don't take yourself seriously. I think that's the secret sauce. Be relatable is not the word I'm looking for. Be approachable.
Yeah. I think the SpongeBob example you gave, it's similar to Mr. Beast. Like a lot of people know who he is, but like me, for example, I never watch. Yeah, I never see a video of him.
Yeah.
I only see podcasts of him and people talking about him, but I don't care about his demographic is teens and kids. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I'm the same. It's like I haven't really watched any of his videos, but I feel like I know that brand pretty well. Know that brand pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So apart from digital world, you haven't forgot about the analog world. What do you guys do at events? And what is airdropping?
Oh boy. Okay, I'm gonna let him take airdropping. But at events, so we've had events. Our first event was like you never know if it's gonna work out, but our first event had I think it was like 400 something people. That was in LA. And oftentimes we'll throw a community or a fandom event that happens at the same time as a big conference, usually an NFT or a crypto conference. But more and more we're leaning into Web2 events, and I'll probably reveal something. We are going to do something at NSE, so something to consider. Um, but we throw these events that happen at the same time as a conference, very much like NVIDIA or Pixar does a party when SIGGRAPH is happening, right? So we do that, and we invite our fans. And if you have a Claynosaur in your sticker book, you get instant access into that event, right? And and our craziest one, I think, had 1,300 people in
Yeah.
Amsterdam.
Yeah.
And it was insane. It was like people from all over the community. There was like, of course, there were some special guests, but for the most part, these were all collectors or people that have engaged with our brand in some shape or form. And it's a way to kind of get fans to interact with each other, create memories around the brand. And it's a way to also celebrate the brand and act as a further flywheel. Or sometimes we'll make announcements over there. But at those events, oftentimes we will do an airdrop, and an airdrop kind of, how
Yeah,
would you describe
well, an airdrop is
in its
very
simplest
simple.
state?
It's like sending something into the inventory of a fan. So you remember we had this idea that you have a little bag that is attached to you as a fan, and airdropping is sending an item to that little bag that you can that is yours, right?
So you're
Uh,
giving like a free asset to someone's wallet.
Yeah. So it's like check
exactly.
your sticker book, and then everyone checks their sticker book, and wow, I have a new rare card, and they can do whatever they want with that card. They can
And you
trade
can
it,
only get
keep
it
it.
at that event.
You can only get it
Exactly.
at
For
the event.
example, we were
It's
at NFT
geo-fenced.
Paris a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
We had a very cool booth there, like very IP centric, showing not only the IP, but the product, what we are building on digital, the plushie, and so on and so on. And people could walk into the booth, look at behind the scene content. And on that screen, there were like a little QR code. And if they scan the QR code, they receive a badge that proved that they were in Paris, right? But that badge after comes with a little surprise in the future. So if you're in Paris, you get a little something in the future. So once again, I think something that we do pretty well and work pretty well for us is blurring the frontier between analog, digital, content, product. And by blurring those frontiers, it allows us to create much more memorable touch point for people. And I think this is part of the strategy. And so far it has worked wonders for
It
us.
becomes an organic loyalty and collector system.
Yes.
So for example, we can do something fun where if we've thrown 10 events around the world in a year, there will have been geo-fenced special collectibles that act as like authenticated check-ins. And we can say anyone that has collected at least 5 of those badges by the end of the year, get a free limited edition vinyl sent to them. Of course, they have to redeem it, but they get like this vinyl that is just for them. We will never make this collectible ever again. Or they get invited to like a private event. Or we can do so many things, or we can feature their dinosaurs on our Instagram. Whatever it is, the point is you're creating this like gamified fandom experience, and you're offering fans or would-be fans that might discover us for the first time compounding returns
Yeah.
on stuff that they're doing anyways. You're not saying, hey, be a fan because we're going to reward you. We're saying, because you're a fan, we're going to throw some cool shit your way
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah, it almost becomes like a status symbol for someone to
It's very much a
own.
status symbol. Yeah,
It's
you
a
nailed it.
loyalty program.
Yeah.
It's a collector program that is so embedded in whatever that we do. It's not aggressive. We are not
Yeah.
forcing people to collect and whatever,
Yeah.
but we firmly believe that those collectibles are little breadcrumbs little entry door into the ecosystem that we are building. And the more we distribute them, the more people get accustomed to it, the more it's going to be fluid,
Yeah.
and the more we will transfer people from one product to another. And that's
Yeah.
the beauty of what we're building.
And I think when we do, you know, I'll keep it hush hush, but when we do our event at Annecy, this will be one of the first times that the animation industry this year at large will get to for the first time own one of our collectibles in a very frictionless, abstracted way. It'll be so simple for
Oh my
everybody.
God, I have to come then.
Yeah,
You are
please.
invited. So
Guest of honor. Everybody's a guest of honor, but let us know. But we're super excited, and yeah, they'll we're planning something really special for Annecy.
But wait, are those collectibles going to be $2,000 like yours online?
We can't speak to the price. These ones might be soul bound. How do these ones work?
Yeah, those one often when you it's an
Unconfirmed,
event.
but
Yeah, the thing is that we are not airdropping or sending something knowing that it's going to have a lot of value in the future. We can't do that, right? There are different type of collectibles. There are the collectibles that we sold in the past. There might be collectibles that we will sell in the future, right? But in the middle, you have also all those little memorabilia collectibles that basically track your participation into whatever we do. So if you come to Annecy and you are at the event, you might have an experience there that will give you a little something. I'm not telling you, and we are not telling you that that little something will be the key to a magical experience and financial freedom, right? Because we can do that. But it's definitely a proof that you were there. And as all those collectibles are, knitted into the fabric of our ecosystem, it allows us to build once again this compound
experience.
system,
Yeah,
this experience.
So yeah, and we've done both. We've done where we've airdropped collectibles that, hey, you guys do whatever you want with these. You want to kind of put them up in a marketplace, go for it. And of course, that's been really interesting for people. But we've also done the badge system, which is more of a soul-bound approach. But once you have that in your sticker book, it can then be redeemed for all these other things or be part of the point system, or there's a million opportunities there. And like Jack says, is a huge value add for digital collectibles is it is a like perfectly authenticated moment in time and space. You cannot change that metadata. Like you cannot change that information. And so once it's out there and once it exists on chain, it is next level authenticity, which means it's the next iteration of how you would check in to a place or how a collectible could be representative of proof of participation.
I'm sold. I'm booking my ticket to Annecy right
So I'll
now.
see you there. I'll see you there.
Yes.
I'm super stoked.
Yeah.
I'll definitely let you know though. We'll keep in touch and I'll let you know what we're planning there.
I'm interested about your social media strategy. So when you say you're doing A/B testing, what does that
Yeah.
mean? So what metrics are you looking for analytics? Retention graphs? Are you comparing your worst and best performers? Like,
Yeah, so we look at retention graphs, and for those that don't know, that's kind of like how aggressive is the fallout rate after like the first second of a reel. We run it so we have an amazing social media team. And they run analytics on everything. It's like, hey, was this color dinosaur successful in this country, right? Like things like we really go micro with the things because if we want to keep it organic and not push advertise everything, the tools that we have at our disposal is making sure that we set ourselves up for success without pushing things aggressively, right? And so yeah, we look at retention graphs. If we often learn from a reel and we try to tell ourselves like, how could we have done better? And sometimes it's like, oh, what worked really well? And let's see if we can recreate that. So for example, one of our best videos was the one where they're camping together and they're building a campfire, and you've got like three of the characters that are kind of doing something related to making the fire. And then the last shot is all of them around the fire, but the Rex is there roasting like his marshmallow, and he hasn't been part of building the fire, so he's done no work. But it's not how we built the reel. It was a happy accident. There was a shot with the Rex that was like helping to build the fire, but we just decided to omit that shot because it was just a pacing issue. But then we saw that all the comments were like, dude, that is so me, or that is so you. They were sharing it where they're like, whenever we're like with our friends, like I'm the guy that like just doesn't do anything and reaps the benefits. And we realized, wow, happy accident. How can we then leverage that idea into other pieces of content and actually have like a double meaning that is hyper relatable to people? And when we approach content, the thing we ask ourselves almost every time is who would share it? Why would someone share it? Who would share it? And to whom? Right? And if you can answer at least two of those questions, you have a reel that is most likely going to do better than the average reels. Sharing is like the most important thing. We look at, hey, do we think, we'll compare like five reels that are kind of similar but different lengths, and we'll ask ourselves, do we think the
Mm.
length of the reel affected it, right?
And
Uh, you know,
does it have an effect?
sometimes, yeah, yeah. And oftentimes, actually, you got to make sure there's scroll warriors. That's what we call them. You got to make sure that, especially on TikTok, that if someone is going to scroll and find your reel as they're scrolling, you got to get into the action. So if there's 1 second of negative space or no action, that second has to look real good or something has to happen to force people to stop. A tool that you have is obviously text, and I've seen you actually use it. But so text will make force people to stop, but in our case, we don't always throw text on our screen, but we make the character do something. So we A/B test everything. We definitely A/B test is basically testing one version of something against the other and seeing which is more successful, and then seeing if there was truth to that thesis. By C would be, the
Mm-hmm.
product. We A/B test the ads we do for plushies. So
Mm, okay.
for example, most recently we've done a lot of like character-based plushie ads,
Are those
like
Facebook
creatures
ads or YouTube ads?
everywhere. So
Everywhere. Mhm.
we got Facebook ads, we got Instagram ads, TikTok ads, and YouTube, and essentially it, we're testing it against are we seeing good conversion for the plushies and which ads are more successful and why. So an example is kind of like there's if you go on Instagram, you're gonna see those ads, by the way, because there's like a whatever the you call like that banner thing you can click and it goes like plushies, and you'll see the progression of how we've evolved our ads there. It used to be just like a nice little product photo, but it didn't mean much to people. It's like, yeah, the product looks good, but that doesn't make me feel something. Then it was like, okay, them as a group with like a funky background and even that. And everything started to change when we treated it like a narrative, like pull people into a little story. And now we started making them do cute things, or we have videos that feel like an influencer or a normal person is just like filming their plushies doing stuff. But the ads that are extremely successful look a lot more like if you know Jellycat, they do this a lot too, which is like give the plushies personality and put them in a situation like a day in the life situation or a thematic situation. And actually that's a good case of like we were A/B testing all the ads and we've refined our work until we've landed in a place that we feel is like really powerful.
Mm. And in terms of colors, like I know social media in general likes when you have brighter colors in the video. So I thought that was so smart. I thought someone who knows marketing, um, almost like
If it
marketing
looks like
came
you can eat
before.
it, so there's
That's
a term
true.
in the toy
Yeah.
world. If it looks edible, you're halfway there. So that was one of the approach of how we design these characters.
Oh, wow.
But we like deep dive. So for example, when we have like we had some dance trends that were more K-pop, and we ran the statistics on like which colors are resonate a lot more in Korea. For example, pink was
Hmm.
was a color there. And so we made the decision to make the Rex pink in that video, and then we did it twice, and in both cases we saw huge
Yeah.
numbers. And so we realized actually color in different colors in different parts of the world actually are likely to boost the success because it's just more appealing to a certain demographic for whatever reason.
But wait a minute, when you post a video that's targeted for Korea, you don't have that option on TikTok to target a specific
We
country.
don't we, Right, but the song is a K-pop song, so there's a high likelihood
Uh-huh, got
that
it.
it'll make its way to that demographic. And like I said, if we're not going to boost it, we're going to give ourselves a fighting chance, which is if it does find its way to the Korean demographic because it's a K-pop song, are they likely to share it? And so we kind of like hedge our bets.
Yeah.
So it's like a really scientific approach to kind of building on social media. But you got it, right? You got to give yourself an advantage um, to get the right numbers.
Yeah, I'm curious, how many people do you have on creating that content? Storyboard artist? How many
Yeah,
animators?
two storyboard artists.
Two, sorry, for one
Um,
video or no?
no, sorry, our
For,
team right now is
yeah.
two storyboard artists,
hmm
and we have five animators if I count the anim soup. Wait, is it six? It's five or six animators if I count the anim soup. Um, we are going to expand and we are going to, look to outsource some of this when we're ready for it. And every now and then, if we got to go faster, then we ask friends for help or we find the right people for a little bit. But right now, everything we do, it's with just about five animators, three lighters, one of which has no time to do this anymore and is overlooking all of CG. So only two lighters actually. That's about it.
Yeah.
But
Then you have the marketing team and the
Oh, right.
content
The
team,
social media
the
team.
social media team.
mm,
So yeah, it's a I would say 15 to 20 man unit kind of, right?
Yeah, so social media team is about three people. That yeah, I would say it's yeah, anywhere between like 12 to 20
Yeah,
depends on what we're working
of
on.
the wind. Yeah.
mhm,
If you count like all the humans involved. But we
yeah.
didn't start that way. We started so nimble. Like we started with really just a few people. It was like four people at one point. And the better at it we got and the more refined and the more empowered to hire the right people we were, the more it made sense to sustainably grow that team. And when we were hiring for social media after the success of our like first couple of Instagram videos, we got applications from everybody, and we landed on someone that used to run socials for, do you know Woobles? Like the little knitting characters. If you look up like
Okay,
Woobles, Woobles,
okay.
these are awesome. They do stuff with like Harry Potter and Star Wars and whatever,
Mm.
but it's these little knitting characters. Like you buy a little set and it looks like a character and you have to like knit that character. So we have someone from that social media team and they've really kind of helped think about how we create content and content for product.
All right, so we are in part two. It may seem a bit abrupt, this cut, but it is what it is. And in the first part, we saw a little bit of front end of Claynosaurz, and now we're gonna see the back end. And I know you love to talk about the technology behind generating those 10,000 assets. So tell me, how did the partnership with CoreWeave came about, and why Maya and why not Unreal? And yeah.
Yeah, I think hi by the way. I'm glad to be doing this a second time. I think it's we talked too much last time. Maybe that's why we went over. CoreWeave have been phenomenal partners actually. We started the exercise with a company called Conductor that got acquired by CoreWeave after the fact. So then CoreWeave became our natural partners and they specialize in a slew of things, but for us, it was sort of like decentralized render farms, which is what we were using them for. And originally we couldn't have done it without them because they helped basically kind of like sponsor a lot of the render power that we needed when we were building out the first collection. I think we did something like 480,000 frames for our collectibles, which
Mm,
is like two times the length of any kind of like feature animated film.
yeah.
And the partnership came about through a friend who suggested we talk to Conductor. He at the time was I think he was like head of CG at Cinesite. Maybe still is actually. Um, and that was basically the story. We kind of gave them the pitch of what we were doing. They were super interested in the fact that we were exploring all these kind of new ways of doing things, but also like a generative technology, which is actually pretty similar to what they do in video games, but hadn't really been done in Maya the way we wanted to do it. Why did we go with Maya? In retrospect, probably should have done it with Unreal, but we didn't know anything about Unreal at the time. It would have been difficult on the animators. It would have been difficult on the people in-house that knew how to render this stuff. And actually, Unreal is we're currently building our Unreal pipeline, but we've realized it's really difficult to create a generative loop if it's not just generating like different items on a character. Because for us, and I'll give you some visuals, but where the complexities were is we have over 1 million possible variations on our Claynosaurz, and a lot of that comes from their skin colors and patterns, and of course there's different species, but every time you see a pattern, there's 5 different possible layers that can be used to build that pattern, and then those layers are combined in different ways, so the computer will decide what it takes and what it doesn't. And for
Mm-hmm.
example, like, and these are like little sub brands. So you have like a skin pattern called Apre, you have a skin pattern called Toxic. We give them fun little names, but each of those patterns have like hundreds of possible combinations, if you count colors and all the texture layers and stuff like that. But the TLDR is basically we couldn't have Unreal automate a process that would then choose to stack different layers one on top of each other. And we're currently exploring that, but that's kind of how we built that. And I got to present that sort of proprietary the tools that we built for that at SIGGRAPH with Corey. So that was like super, super cool.
Oh, so that was an in-house proprietary tool that you guys built.
Yeah, the so we kind of built this code to generate these assets. The way we did it had never been done, and still to this day hasn't been done that way across I mean, I don't even think Web 2, but definitely across like any other brands that are exploring digital collectibles. Like it just hadn't been done that way because it's so complex.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to build our own kind of plugins to pull that off. And these plugins could read CoreWeave's or Conductor's APIs to then automate the process of generating a character and sending it to the render farms.
So was it you then or CoreWeave that combined all the assets into one scene? I saw you
Uh,
mention that
it
in
was both. It was we would combine it through we had like I think again I'm not like the tech genius here. It's really the guys that were taking care of this, Alex and company. But basically, we would have like one master scene file that contains every possible
mm-hmm.
combination, and then the code would ask for a specific dinosaur type, color, skin pattern, combination, whatever, and it would call the rest and it would ship that to the render farm, or the render farm would read that file and would read our
Mm-hmm.
code and then create metadata at the same time so that when it does generate a collectible, it could then attribute metadatas to it so that you know what kind of collectible you have. You're like, okay, I've got a T-Rex and it's in the volcanic color, which is just a fancy way of saying red. And it's running and it's smiling, and it also has 3 layers from the toxic pattern and yada yada yada, stuff like that.
All right. So did you have to bring like a Web3 developer who had the idea how that infrastructure would go, or did you just
So
came?
no, so everything I'm talking about right now is still just at the traditional Web 2 layer, because that was just us building the 3D assets, but having the ability to populate more than 1 million variations.
I know, but the
Uh,
logic of it,
the logic.
yeah.
So we just man, we just looked at like traditional collectibles, and we
Uh-huh.
were asking ourselves like, what when we were collecting like Pokemon cards or toys or things like that, what are things that make certain things collectible? And we will also wanted to gamify the experience of collecting. So, if I'm someone that wants to collect just purple dinosaurs, I can do that, but I can be like, hey, I want all the species in purple. So I want like a Stego, a Rex, a Dactyl, whatever in purple, but I also want to make sure that they're all in the, call it like the Jurassic pattern. And I want to make sure that I have the ones that have all the layers turned on, so the 5 skin layers, and I have just the ones that are running, for example, right? We
Mhm.
wanted also, we were the first project to ever do animation as a collectible trait. So people
Yeah.
collect different animation cycles.
Yeah.
Um, but in doing that, you can create a slew of different combinations. And we're about to release something we called, like the code name is our achievement system, and it can reward users, or they can get points and different collectible badges via the way in which they collect our dinosaurs. So it's kind of like an achievement system. It's like if I have a full, we call it like herd, like a
Mhm.
group of let's say I have like all the T I have one T-Rex for every color, right?
Mhm.
And boom, I get extra points for that. Let's say I have like a herd that's every single species, but they're not all the right
Mhm.
combinations of skin patterns and skin colors. That's still a herd, but it's not a perfect one. But a perfect
Mhm.
one would be like I've got like one of each species or one of each dinosaur. They're all in the same kind of animation cycle. They're
Oh,
all the
God.
same color. They're all the same skin pattern, and so we wanted a system that kind of really makes collecting fun, but allows you to try to tick boxes as an achievement and try to collect these things in a really specific way, and then you can get points for that. And those points lead into other digital rewards, like digital booster packs that has items that lead into our Game Loft game. It has you can get physicals for it, so like limited edition merch. You can get your character featured on our social media. A whole bunch of things are all tied via this like collector system. But when we built out this collection, we had a lot of, I mean, we had Web3 advisors. A lot of that helped understand how do you go to market and how do you market yourself in that ecosystem. But a lot of it was our gut instinct as creators and as like nerds that collect toys in the first place and play video games and we're into like Yu-Gi-Oh cards or Magic cards or Pokemon cards. So we used a lot of our instinct there in figuring out like what do we think would be like a really cool system that promotes collectorship. Um, and we were inspired by things like pop vinyl as well, right? Like or Beanie Babies. And all those things have like similar systems where it's like, hey, there's many different I can release a Lord of the Rings set, and then within that, there's different types of Gandalfs that I can collect, right? So I can decide I want all of the Lord of the Rings collection, or I just want every single Gandalf or whatever. And we were very inspired by that.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, and for the audience listening, you can go to Claynopedia and look more into herds and how you can collect.
You've seen it. Club is a
Yeah.
good one. Club is that's just our fans that built it. And
Mhm.
and it's pretty crazy. But I'll send you stuff that you can show on the podcast that shows some of the technology behind it if that's helpful to you. But
Yeah, for sure. But it's crazy to me. I found one Discord group which is like the official one, but there are so many different groups that fans build themselves. And I was like, oh my God, that's
Yeah, okay.
so
So this is so interesting because we have these conversations with like our media partners and all the people that we work with to really grow this brand. And one thing that happens when you release like thousands of collectibles with all these like beautiful different like skin patterns and special collectible traits and whatever is naturally over time there's like rarer variants or really identifiable variants that get collected by specific groups, and those groups form sub communities. And so we've got the Crimson Clan, we've got the Sand Sparks, we've got the Bored Rexes. So those are just like any T-Rex that's bored is part of like the Bored Rex community. And then you've got like the Apra
dactyls.
Lodge. Yeah, exactly. So, but the point is you create different pockets of community around different collectible niches. And the best way I could describe this to like normies is like guilds. It's just guilds. But these fans create or those collector guilds end up creating side events at
Mhm.
our parties. Sometimes we actually facilitate them to have their own events across across the globe. So if there's people that want to take care of a fan event in London, they can talk to us and we facilitate them and do all kinds of fun things. But the other thing that's like a superpower for us is it's kind of like, when we talk about community-driven franchise building or community-driven storytelling, we pull a lot of ideas from what the community is doing. So, for example, these guilds that are actually really visually identifiable as well because of the characters that they represent, um, we're thinking about how we can throw those like squads of dinosaurs into our TV show, into our game, and actually make them like canon characters. So the Crimson Clan will start to show up in the TV show. It'll start to show up in the games. It'll start to show up as rarer collectibles, things like that. And it's like such a beautiful way to be building with your early fans that are coming up with ideas or that are creating these like sub communities. And then you foster that and you watch it grow. And as a creator, I think as a creator, it's always like a difficult, or maybe like a scary exercise to learn to let go and not control everything. But if you can do that, then you end up with like a creative powerhouse where you don't have to keep every idea that your fans are suggesting, but you might find some really amazing, funny ones too, right? And if you're gonna like allow that into the creative process, then it's amazing. So there's so many ideas that you know were not part of Claynosaurz in the very beginning and then became that, like the sky taxis, which are the dactyls that carry other dinosaurs around, all these like sub communities. So many, there's actually characters that show up on social media now and that are more recurring that were all like community ideas. And sometimes we'll host like ideation forums in our Discord where they'll come up with like possible like social media reels and things like that. And then we'll reward them by featuring their characters on our Instagram.
Yeah, so it's so amazing that you have these early adopters and you reward them, and people who are watching on the side, they're like, oh, they get a pat on the back. I want to be like them. So it becomes like a
It's
appreciation status symbol in a way.
Yeah, it's kind of like a community status symbol, and you hit the nail on the head because oftentimes people are asking like, well, rewarding, does that just mean is that just like a money thing, or is that the only thing that they want is their collectibles to go up and actually up in value? And actually we did this exercise once where we ran a vote and we were like, would you rather win a free Clayno, which right now is worth a few $1,000s, or would you want your character, your avatar, your Claynosaur to feature on our Instagram? And almost unanimously, everybody picked Instagram. And I guess what I'm trying to say is it's part of our secret sauce and brand building is early inclusion and opening up the curtains and allowing people into the creative process. The emotional utility that comes with that is unfathomable. It's just so it's a hard thing to explain sometimes, but it's extremely tangible and people care. They care about your brand. They feel like it's their baby as much as it is yours. They feel like they're invited into the process and they can go back to their friends, their family, they can say like, hey, I had a part in this and I can prove it. Like, and that's really special to people. And it's something that we are finessing and are really thinking deeply about recreating for other brands. And I think that's the future, is like it's basically what we talk about when we say community driven.
Yeah, I really like your idea of bringing user-generated art into your art book, which usually comes after the show is done, but you're building it while you're making the whole thing.
Yeah, you know what sucks is like, and you know this because you've worked on so many shows too, where it's like, unfortunately, you don't show the world everything we've been building. And sometimes we might say like 2 years later, like, hey, all this artwork we were sitting on, like we've changed direction, and that's not what the story is anymore. We're more of the mind that yes, it showing a lot might sometimes add confusion, but you kind of want to show people for the first time ever, which is not something that's done, is like, hey, like before any of this becomes big, I want you guys to see how we're building this with you guys, how we're thinking about the world building element. And some stuff might not make it. And actually a lot of stuff might not make it, but look at all this stuff. And it's really cool. And at least I think it's really special to audiences where they can see the creative process and actually understand that not everything makes the cut. which I think a lot of audiences don't know. Like, we take that for granted. We take it for granted that like when audiences watch, like when they watch Arcane, they hear about the big budget and they kind of don't understand why that is. They don't see all the stuff that didn't make the screen. They don't see all the retakes. They don't see entire towns that were built before any sort of like direction was changed or whatever. But if you can show them that, they're like, "Oh man, I get the creative process and I get that sometimes it's messy." And I think that inviting them into that is really special, which is why we're super transparent with like all that early artwork that might never actually be canon. But but it goes back to the point of testing your early development cycle. Show them stuff you're working on, and people might like it, or they might not, or they might have some comments, and you actually can test early on whether an idea is kind of cool or not. I can
Yeah.
get into that like because I feel like I'm talking a lot, but I can get into why that's powerful and how we're thinking about building episodic. But I think it's the future. I think you can de-risk the whole process by just being extremely transparent with it. And it's almost like like an influencer growing provenance on YouTube, only you're doing it for an animation brand.
Yeah. And I mean, even if your product flops, you learn so much about copywriting your audience, how to
Yeah,
hook attention. There's so many benefits of it. And it reminds me of a Stanley Cup brand. They did a similar thing. They didn't show the development of it, but the community did drive the marketing. They actually went viral with this cup that survived the car fire, and the company gave that woman a new car, and that exploded. And
I
then
remember.
after that, a bunch of these mom influencers caught on to it, and people started sharing it as part of their accessory. Plus, it's very pretty. Colors are similar to your brand as well. So it generated this whole wave of UGC videos that were
It's more intimate.
not paid. Yeah. Um,
It's more intimate. Like you say, you get a decentralized marketing army. And in an
yeah.
ecosystem, I don't we talked about this in part one, but look, the reality, and actually you talked about it in your video that you did on Instagram. One of the biggest hurdles today is the crazy amount of competition. So you're not just competing with Netflix or one TV
Yes.
anymore, or just like movie theaters. You're competing with all these different social media channels. You're competing with Mr. Beast. You're competing with a 9-year-old that can post a video of their dog doing something silly and get 300 million
Yes.
views, right? And so in a way, the playing field is kind of level because now everybody has equal opportunity. It means that the big guys have less monopoly, but it also means that overall the competition is really steep. How do you compete in that ecosystem? Build yourself a marketing army, which is your fans that are going to help the flywheel effect. And kind of the process that we do is we say, well, we're going to empower those fans. We're going to give them with the right tools to help build with us. And but we're also going to align incentives via the digital collectibles and whatever. But I see a lot of other brands that really like tapped into pop culture, like Duolingo, for example. Like,
Mm.
when there's an idea that's funny that everyone's talking about, they'll lean into it and they'll create like a sub trend and things like that. And it really works for them.
Or Wizz Air, were they who put the eyes on the planes and started
Oh,
like
is it Ryanair? There's
Ryanair,
Ryanair.
right,
So
right,
funny.
right.
They're so
Yeah,
funny.
yeah, yeah. But they basically mimified the whole brand on TikTok.
Yeah, absolutely. And that speaks to people because it's less corporate, because it's more
Mm.
honest, and because it feels like, it's like, I don't know if this is gonna make sense, but one of the homies. Like the company feels like it's part of the gang, right?
And it's on brand because they sell cheap tickets. If they were this high class,
Then it would kind of be like
yeah,
weird.
it would be off.
100% I'm with you there.
All right, we steered away from the animation and technical
As
part.
usual, I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's just go back for a second. So I'm curious, why did you guys pick walk cycles and run cycles? Why did you go that way and not choose anything else, basically?
So it was a few things. One is we treated these things like collectibles, right? Like, so it's kind of like, well, if I hold a toy, wouldn't it be cool to just have like, or pop vinyls or whatever? It's like, well, what would be the natural, why would it be digital, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, it could be digital because it's technically a passport into other things that we can offer. But when you're doing digital art and you're selling it, you have to ask yourself, well, what's the value add of any kind of digital asset? One of it is there's no wear and tear. So few people talk about this, but it's true. It's there. It's perfect forever. And there's no artifacts. But the other thing is, it could be animated and it could be alive. Which is kind of like a value add uh, over like a physical collectible, right? And for us, it was like we didn't want to overcomplicate it. We didn't. So we focused on locomotion and idols. So we did like your basic idols. We did a few types of locomotion. So we did fast runs, normal runs like gallops or trots. We did slow walks, normal walks. And we also felt that in such a like contained format, you can have a lot of fun with the character. It's I don't want to say it's easier for the animators, but if we wanted animation as a collectible trait and we were going to make I think we have 7 different locomotions for each species. And at the time when we were building this, we were just a couple people doing this for free. Like, we had to keep it kind of simple. But the beauty about keeping things simple is within the simplicity, you can add so much complexity, right? And for us, it was like just such a good way to showcase the characters. And already no one in digital collectibles was doing it the way we were doing, which is like, it's not just a walk cycle. You can collect different
Yeah.
locomotion traits.
Did you had systems for transferring animation and rigs?
Yeah.
And okay.
Yeah. So all the bipeds can interoperate. Of course, you got to tweak them a little bit. So like a raptor is not identical to a rex, but it's pretty close. Um, and so as a starting point, it helped a lot for certain acting things, and it helped a little bit for like I would say for walks. For runs, not so much because the Rex and the Raptor run so differently. Like Raptors are, they're fast, they're sneaky. But actually for the quadrupeds, it really helped because the quadrupeds all interoperate pretty much perfectly. And all the gallops were transferred and then just slightly tweaked. And we realized that they all look great. They all look different because the body shapes are so different. Uh, but yeah, we made sure that we can kind of transfer cycles from one rig to the next and just have the ability to tweak it a little bit. It wasn't perfect, but it was pretty close.
How much time did you guys need for that 10,000 animations?
Okay, so it
So they
was
were all custom, right? Am I getting this right? So you had
no,
to
no, okay,
animate
so
$10,000.
I see where this is going. So okay, so I'll explain it. And again, I'm going to give you visuals for the people listening to the podcast because it might help. But so as far as animation is concerned, there was, I don't remember how many combinations, between 30 and 60, but really you have, let's say in the very first collection, we had 6 species. So we had like a T-Rex, a Raptor, a Stego, an Ankylo, a Trice, and what is the 6? Whatever, there's a 6 in there. But so it's 6 species, and then each of them can have 7 different types of locomotion cycles.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically just 6 times 7, and 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 then the face poses
Mm-hmm.
affect the animation, because if the mouth is open, you've got to animate the tongue.
Mm-hmm.
If it's running a certain way, then its expression is different, it might affect the eyebrows, stuff like that. So we did some tweaks, but let's call it like 60 something animation
Mm-hmm.
combinations. And then those are every possible animation cycle is then cached. So you get a
Mm-hmm.
geocache of each possible character doing every possible animation combination. So you're sitting on anywhere between 60 to 100 animation caches.
Okay.
Actually, it might be more than that. I'm gonna look up the details. I don't actually remember. But anyways, you have a cache for every possible character combination, doing every possible animation clip. And then that's what the computer is pulling for or that's what the code that's generating the textures
Right.
is pulling from. It's looking for, it's rolling the dice, and then it's saying, okay, I need a raptor that is sprinting, that is sneaky, that it has the sad expression. Then it grabs that cache, and then it goes through a secondary process of saying, and here's the texture that I want. I want like a perfect blue toxic skew, so it'll slap all the 5 layers on top of that.
So it wasn't possible for a computer to pull a combination that you guys haven't tweaked. Like if you put a face that you haven't polished.
Not for animation, exactly. So for animation, we kept it really controlled. None of the animation was generative, and
Yeah.
even the textures actually. So okay, so for the animation, yeah, we hedged. We had an existing geocache for every possible combination, so that we can make sure that it's all perfect. We're animators, we
Yeah.
overkill everything. And so we just wanted to make sure that we control the anim. So now you have all these like essentially like geocaches of every combination. For the textures, we reverse engineered them. And you're gonna see it in the visuals, but essentially you have like what does the pattern look like when it's like a perfect pattern? Because honestly, in like we were telling ourselves in comic books, in a TV show, in content, it's kind of like the perfect version of whatever pattern or texture. And then we would look at what does it look like when it's the naked form, which means like 0 layer. So what's like just without that kind of pattern color, but without the stripes, without all
Yeah.
the details. And then we started to run tests on what do the in-betweens look like when there's like the belly turned on, maybe not the stripes turned on. So we were testing that stuff. But because we had controlled what the maximum output looks like and what the first output looks like, we were confident that all the in-between weird combinations that would happen would naturally look good and fun. But what was great is we ended up with happy accidents, like
Yeah.
the Scarlet or the Crimson Clan, right? And things like that, which just naturally happen when you create like 10,000 characters. So we allowed enough kind of like room for errors
Yeah.
because it keeps it fun. But at least we knew that the perfect skew of everything had already been designed.
Yeah. I mean, whenever I browse through your NFT collection, for
Pretty,
the
right? Cool.
for the majority of them, my reaction is like when I see a cute puppy, like, oh, look at that.
It's like a candy shop. We wanted to be like a
Yes.
candy shop. Yeah.
Yes.
And I was told, I don't remember if it was you that had told, but we were told by we have a childhood friend that works at Mattel, and she was saying you've done like half the work, because if you make them look edible, that's like literally 50% of the work for toys. And we're like, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm seeing so many body scrubs for shower that are so edible, and I'm
I
seeing
know it's dangerous.
yeah, the same logic. So how much time did you guys need for one animation, like one cycle, or you can say for the 100 caches? Was it the whole year for your pre-mint process, or?
So it took us about 7 months, start to
Mhm.
finish, to build the whole collection. A
Okay.
big part of that is because a lot of us were doing this part-time. We were kind of
Uh-huh.
wanted to build this together. We all, were kind of like, we had our jobs going on and all that stuff. And
So you still
uh,
haven't quit your job when you launched
not
this?
before, but after, yeah, that
Okay.
process was pretty fast for me. But but basically, we took 7 months. I would say the animation clips would take anywhere between sometimes 2 days, sometimes 5 days. It depends on the complexity of the character. And
Mm-hmm.
we didn't know the characters back then, so we were doing tests. Like sometimes there was a run that there's a lot of runs that we threw away that didn't
Mm-hmm.
really fit. And then when we would fall, like we were still discovering the style, and we didn't want it to be like Spider-Verse-y in its first iteration. Like we didn't want it to be on twos or fours or two kind of like claymation. We
Mm-hmm.
wanted like the smooth like Pixar play. Um, and that's just because we didn't want our identity to be claymation. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, so there was a discovery phase that usually eats up a lot of time. But once we found our style, things got a lot faster, and a lot of that animation could be transferred on another quadruped and then tweaked and stuff like that. But I would say for animation, it must have been probably 2 months of work. The heavy lifting was on the textures. Like that was an
And
insane work because it was basically 10 patterns deconstructed into 5 layers each with like correct alphas and understanding how each of those patterns uh translate to each species in a bespoke way that makes sense. So each pattern was designed for each species,
mm-hmm.
times 10 times 5 plus the colors.
Mm. But
Yeah.
like 2 months for the whole animation, that's nothing. I mean,
Yeah. But it wasn't a crazy amount of clips, right? So it was like seven walk cycles or like run cycles times about on average 48 to 72 frames per cycle. And then some of it could be transferred as a base for other
right,
species.
right.
So yeah, it's a lot, but okay, I should also say that everybody on the team was like super senior.
Yes.
Like yeah.
A small
Everybody was
detail.
yeah, like it was we had like Boris and Alex, they come from like Illumination and we had people from Sony and all over the place. So it's like everybody there was no hand holding. Like everybody was just
Yeah,
pitching cycles and I think a lot of us have fun with cycles anyways. And so that it was just like I think that process the animation process was probably, which is a weird thing to say, was the most frictionless process.
mm,
Um, and it's everything else that was so brutally technical that was nuts. And then like Dan Jervis, who's I see him over there at the office, he designed all the patterns, and that was just such a labor of love because of the sheer amount of work. All of it had to be designed in 2D and how these things deconstruct. And then we needed a 3D team to bring it to life and all the back and
mm.
forth. It was just nuts. But now we've finessed the process and it's still extremely complex, but we've learned how to make it a lot more efficient and we now have the ability to make these collectibles way more complex than the first time we did it.
Yeah, yeah. I saw you mention in one of the interviews the way you bring new artists and how you're very careful in growing your team and how you have freelancers who are basically paid per shot for social media. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, how did
Yeah.
that model came about? Why not just hire them, I don't know, per month or
So yeah. So okay, so in its first state, that's how we did it. We
okay.
in its first state, it's like we didn't have all the money in the world, and as a startup, the last thing you want to do is grow too fast and hire people full time without,
Mhm.
knowing the person if they're a right fit. But also, it's like, hey, we don't even know if social media is going to work, right? So when we started that exercise,
Ah, got
we
it.
called a lot of friends and then we did an open casting call and we had actually for the trailer, which we just got nominated for the Webbies, but for the trailer we had I think it was like I don't remember how many animators. I think it was like 8 to 10 animators that we had people come in and help us, and these were people we knew, and you probably know them too, as like people like Jason Martinson and stuff like that, and a lot of buddies, and we were paying them basically per shot just to make sure that, hey, if that person's done early, then here's another shot. And but we were cool about it too. It's like, hey, if the shot becomes more complex or it busts like the bids or whatever, then we'll add a bonus on top of that. So it's not like an extractive play there, but it was just a way for us to not get married to something super long term when we didn't even know what this thing would turn out to be. It's kind of like don't bite off more than you can chew. And we did the same thing for social media, where we wanted to go fast and we were calling friends and we'll say, hey, we're paying X amount per like 10 to
Video.
15 second clip. We have storyboards. Do you want to give this a try or not? And a lot of times they were like, yeah, cool, no problem. I'm super happy to help you guys, all that stuff. But eventually we needed a full-time team. We already had but at the start we only had I think 2 full-time animators. Now the team has grown to 6 like full time, and and we are going to continue to expand, but for now we keep it lean. And when we realize we need another animator, then again, we're very careful about those hires because it's still startup mode. And when we hire someone, we want someone to be a part of the family. Like, and I know it's cheesy, but uh, one of the beautiful things about being a small team and in startup mode is that everybody knows each other, everybody kind of vibes with each other, and that's like super important. So whenever we hire someone, it's almost like a calculated risk because it really sucks to have when someone's not a fit in the team and then you have to deal with that. And I think that's where we're really careful. But where we are today now, it's full timers. There's a lot of freelancers for smaller things that we do. If we have to go much faster in animation, like we have a trailer to work on, then we call a lot of friends or we outsource, and our team is able to lead that outsource team anyways. We don't want to grow into a massive animation studio. I think that's the secret here is like a lot of this stuff is we consider it kind of like a commodity where there's a lot of other animation studios with big teams, and if we need help, we can call them. Like we can work with teams like Agora and Steamroller and that kind of stuff. And they have massive pipelines and things like that, which we don't have. For us, we're curators. And so we have like a very small core team of animators that can curate and come up with ideas and lead the charge. But we don't need our in-house team to be massive because we're not making the TV show ourselves. We're outsourcing and leading it. We're not making the video games ourselves. We're outsourcing and leading it. And we kind of define the styles in-house and then have other teams help us with it. That way we can stay lean, but we do what really matters, which is come up with ideas.
Yeah. And it's important because you need to test what the audience says. Like if you not binge, but how do you say? It's not binge. If you produce a bunch of content, like if you have like 10 storyboards of the same
if you output
style, and then the first flops, but then you still paid for the 9, then it doesn't make sense. But this way you kind of publish one, test it, reiterate.
Exactly. And we do a lot of testing. Like I think in our first year was so much, actually the first socials we did was so much social searching. And until we kind of knew what the angle was, but eventually we really found our way and found what content works and what doesn't, and what people like seeing from certain dinosaurs and what they don't. And we started to understand what was successful, and then we leaned into that. We always take risks, but part of how we think of our social media channels is that that's our test kitchen. That's where we get to test all these ideas that are then made more and more airtight based on how people react to them, because we keep everything as organic as possible so that it is a decent test. And based on those reactions and based on how people are reacting to those 15-second clips, it's then very easy for us to take an idea that we know is really powerful and we understand why it's powerful, and we can turn that into a 7-minute episode. Or at least some of the themes or some of the kind of things that we learned from that 15-second clip. So it's exactly what we're doing with this episodic actually is while the writers will be kind of building out the episodes, sometimes they might want to gut check an idea with us, and they'll say, hey, we have this idea for an episode. Do you want to test it in a 15-second clip? Or like, absolutely. But the reverse is true too. They're like, okay, so we know that these clips and these clips, evergreen clips, really worked well. And here's why they worked well. And here's what some people reacted to and here was the surprises that we had. Take that idea and turn it into an episode. And so it's an incredible way to build and kind of de-risk that process. You still want it to kind of be organic and have like soul. But man, if you have your social media channels as test kitchens for building long form content rather than going straight into long form, that's an absolute superpower. You can then take much more risks. You can say, yeah, like this idea seems cool. Let's just test it in a really short, condensed format and see how people react, or see if we can kind of tweak it to make it the best it could possibly be and understand what's going to work and what's not. And I think that's where the future is for building these sort of animated brands.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So I'm curious, what did you find is the key performance driver in terms of storytelling? What did you find was the key ping with the audience, and how much time do you need to make that clip, that one clip? Because I see a lot of animators who want to do like short shots, and
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm advocating for like don't spend so much time in developing it and then using dark colors and posting it on LinkedIn. Just try to make it in a vertical format and play with the audience reaction. And yeah,
You're
so
so
I'm
right.
curious, what was your take on it?
And I love what you're saying because I see the same thing with a lot of there's a lot of animators that I'm seeing put out incredible content, but like you say, it's formatted for LinkedIn and they get a lot of traction on LinkedIn, but that's where the story ends. And it's like, are you trying to get traction from your own peers or are you actually trying to grow a personal brand, right?
Yeah, but even LinkedIn wasn't what it was like 5 years ago.
Yeah, no.
Like the reach is very, very decreasing because
Yeah,
the,
yeah,
the
yeah.
the network is growing.
Yeah, and I'm trying to pull up one of my socials doc, but
Mhm.
basically like the secret sauce is for anything is really to make, and it sounds cheesy, but it's to make relatable content, right? Is when we think of the reels that we make, oftentimes we ask ourselves, sure, you can do a trend, like you can do a dance, and that'll juice up, or we call it juicing your algorithm, because it's kind of like, it's a dance trend, so it's bound to find an audience if it's cool. Um, but when we make evergreen content, which means content that could be used across the board, it's a short story, it's not specific to any kind of trend. We ask ourselves, um, who's going to share it, to whom, and why, right? Is it a boyfriend that's going to share it to his girlfriend? And is it going to be like, oh, that's so us, or that was so us the other day? And if you make your content highly shareable, that's going to drive your viewership like crazy, because sharing in a lot of these social media platforms is absolutely everything. That's what's going to trigger your algorithm the most. It's not just like basic views, but it's also a reason people are going to subscribe and stick around. If they find themselves sharing your content often to their friends, like, oh my God, that's so us, or like that was so you the other day, and it makes it relatable, they start to relate to the characters. They start to identify your brand with something that they're happy to come back to, so that they can have more materials to share with. And so I think that's the really important thing, right? Is like I know that in that video you had done the other day, you had posted like Nobody Sausage had featured there. And that's something that they do phenomenally well, which is like it's content
Yes.
that you can share with a friend because it's something you went through last week, or something you went through, even today. And so the way we approach our content is definitely that, is make it as relatable as possible. Like if you have like a pyramid for the importance of how you build out content for social media, relatability and shareability is like by far number one. The second thing that we think of is what's going to set yourself apart from other stuff. What's going to set yourself apart from the rest, right? And that could be your visual identity, but it could also be like what you're known for thematically. So again, you think of like Nobody Sausage, and it's just like unhinged and weird. And so is do you know, like Noodle and Bun? They're weird and unhinged, and it's counterculture, and that kind of works. And actually, if you think of like a SpongeBob, it's weird and unhinged. Um, when we were building Claynosaurz, we were thinking, okay, it's really quirky. It could be pop culture, but it's kind of quirky and oftentimes a little bit out of the box and like sassy. That's what we wanted for like our identity of Claynosaurz, like, and wholesome. So it's like if people come to our account, they kind of know what to expect
Mm.
over time. And so that was part two, is kind of like try to figure out what your identity is going to be. But actually, what I'm about to say is kind of counter to that, because it's kind of like the first time you start these exercises, you can test, like you can try all these sorts of things. It's just over time you want to kind of like finesse and find your niche. Um, and but yeah, man, relatable content, evergreen content lasts forever. So like short stories that are meaningful, that are always relatable. So for example, our video about the first one that went viral was the dinosaurs doing limbo. and there was the Bronto that was way too tall but still wants to try, and the other two dinosaurs are like really weirded out by the fact
Yeah,
that
I
it
know
even
that one.
right. The way they react was a little bit
Mm,
unhinged. Each dinosaur, we call it Dino XYZ, so like each dinosaur does it in a way that's specific to
mhm.
their anatomy or their quirks. Um, but that kind of content lives forever. Like it's not based on any specific trend. It's a short story about how each dinosaur explores limbo. It says a lot about the friendship that they have. It says a lot about a group of three friends that are all very different from each other. These are all things that are hyper relatable. And so that's
Yeah.
the way we approach content. I know I keep saying the same word over and over again, but like relatability is everything, and evergreen content that you can reuse and repost over time is also super important.
Yeah, I feel like Luciano Munoz did that really well with his short film Freelance, where
Oh
he,
yeah, because to every freelancer in the world, like it doesn't matter if you're an animator, if you're a graphic designer, if you're an
Mm,
architect, like
yeah,
even if you're like a builder, like a contractor for
yes,
house, all those things are so relatable because clients will never be happy and will
yeah,
always
yeah,
make retakes. So it that you nailed it. That was so relatable to absolutely everybody. It doesn't even
yeah,
matter if you're an animator or not. So
yeah,
100%. And then
yeah,
people shared it because they were like, dude, that's like our clients last week. Or like, that's like the person I was working with, or that's like our supervisor. It's so hyper relatable.
yeah. Small segue. I did a talk with Luciano here. Link will be somewhere around here, so check it
That's
out.
awesome. I'm
Uh,
definitely gonna, I didn't know you did a talk. I'm definitely gonna
yes.
watch it.
Oh, it
I
was like
love
two
that show.
hours, so brace
I love
yourself.
that show. That's awesome.
Um, so I want to get into something that was really super interesting for me, and that was your partnership with, I'm gonna misspell the name, with Kodo Studios, with your branding partner.
Wow, you deep though, like crazy. That's
Yes.
awesome.
So I want to know what what made you buy into them compared to the other ones, and
Okay.
how much do they cost to hire?
Okay, I'm gonna tell you the number,
Yes.
then I'm gonna ask Jack if I'm actually allowed to tell you the number.
Okay.
But the exercise we did with them was just about $100,000. And that is actually
Exercise. What do you mean exercise?
well the whole branding
Ah, the whole
exercise.
branding. Right. Okay.
Yeah, I call it an exercise for whatever reason. It was a minimum viable branding exercise, which means it didn't contain all the bells and whistles. But this was after year one, like we needed an identity and we needed to clean up our whole, how we, not just how we communicate, but what does our logo look like in different platforms? What are the colors we use and don't use when the company communicates, all that kind of stuff, branding packages. And so we needed that. And Kodo, so Jack, who you met the other time, who comes from the branding world and had built an agency back in Europe that then became an agency in New York and stuff like that, had a lot of contacts um in the branding world and interviewed a ton of studios
Mm-hmm.
and knew about Kodo and had friends that have worked with them as well. And these guys are top level. They've worked with everybody from they've done the rebrand, I think, on Discord, they've done Netflix, they've done like Google, they've done a whole bunch of companies branding exercise. Uh, um, and we were really lucky that they wanted to work with us. Every now and then, some of these bigger brands or these like up and coming like design agencies love to work with smaller companies that they either think can become bigger or that allows them to kind of like explore different things or be creative. And so we were lucky enough to fit that bill. They knew a lot about Web3. They were exploring other companies that work in Web3, and they loved what we represented, which was kind of a company built by creatives for creatives and trying to do things a different way, which is something that they also represent because they're a fairly new company in the branding world. And they have a very specific identity and they do things differently. But it was amazing to work with them. Super lucky for me. It was my first exercise with a branding agency, though I let I let Jack and Dan do a lot of the heavy lifting there, but super super cool.
So they're not
We're
working
careful
with
with. Oh,
anymore?
sorry.
They're not working with you guys anymore?
Well, they've done the
The
branding,
work.
right?
Got it.
So that was oh man, that's almost 2 years ago now. That's crazy
Mm.
how time goes by. But they did the first iteration of branding, gave us the tools we needed to finesse. And it's maybe something we revisit in a couple years if we need a refresher now that we've evolved so much as a company. So usually it's
Mhm.
like, you might want to rebrand at some point when you've kind of like re-identified yourself. But yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, so why did they stood apart from others? Like what was their secret
It was
sauce?
a few things. It was recommendations from other people, like with animation. It was also the companies that they had worked with. It was also that they were really creative and outside the box in a lot of things that they do. Um, and proximity was great because they have like a studio in New York. So for us, like time
Hmm.
zones wise, that
Hmm.
was awesome. The price was right compared to some of the other firms.
Hmm.
And oftentimes when we choose partners is, we look for a lot of partners that can add an extra validity to who we are as a brand, given the fact that there's a lot of question marks about Web3 and a lot of unknowns, and people don't understand it yet. So when you're operating in a new industry that people don't get, it's good to work with partners that'll signal like an extra cosign or extra like validation. Now we've worked with Kodo, we're in the trenches with Gameloft, and we're working with a huge partner for episodic, and all these things matter. It's like, of course, it's two things. It's like we want to work with the best partners that can do the job well for us, but we also want partners that want to explore Web3 with us and can actually signal to everybody that actually this might be a new way of doing things. And if these guys are looking at it, there's something there.
Mm. So when you hired them, you already had your designs, your like main color schemes, probably maybe even fonts. So what did they help you around with? I know you were mentioning how you're very careful to communicate Web3 world to the Web2 audience. So were they a part of that communication style, or what was their job in branding?
Yeah. So it was like a minimum viable version of it. So it wasn't like the whole package, but they did work on voice. Definitely they did a little bit of Web3 voice, but honestly, that was our niche. So we were already good at that. They helped with how we communicate in Web2.
Mhm.
They actually did help with color palette. That
Mm.
was
Okay.
definitely that yeah, that was their job. uh, the shape of any buttons we would build,
Hmm.
stuff like that. There was, certain graphics we would use for social media templates, and
Website.
yeah. And for fonts, they played around a lot with font. The irony is we ended up using our original Claynosaurz like logo font, which was built by Dan's wife, who's a typographer, a cryptographer. I forgot what the word is, but someone that makes fonts or
Okay.
lettering. And so we stuck to that, but they helped us pick other fonts for like subtitles for things like that.
Hmm.
And a slew of things. It's really like and it changed everything because previously it's like kind of like our posts, not our posts, but like when we built graphics, it was like all over the place. And now it's a lot more cohesive and how
Hmm.
we think about packaging and things like that. But yeah, they help with a ton, color, shape, language, voice, and a lot of things that helped us build the current website. Although we're in the process of redoing that website now that we have so many more things to talk about.
Mm. Yeah, so everywhere you go, there's rainbows and roses. Like there's so much joy and yeah, just joy around you everywhere you show up. So I'm curious, where do you guys struggle? Do you have dark times?
Of
Or is
course
it
we yeah, of
all?
course there are times. There's a lot of drama when you build a startup. And I think that a lot because so many artists were involved and it's not for many artists, the business side of things is not natural, right? Or it's not something that you're conditioned to understand as well as people that have been exposed to it or stuff like that. So there was a lot of friction, like understanding what does equity mean, understanding, like it's a startup and you are an owner just as much as you're not an employee anymore, and there's certain responsibilities. And also the fact
Mm,
that as a company, we were trying to grow a brand and build an IP or a character brand, and we are going at the speed of light, which is tough. And what I mean by that is we were doing social media, so your classic social media, like understanding how to grow Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. We're doing social media for Web3, primarily on Twitter, which is a whole different thing. We have Discord management, and there's thousands of people in Discord. We are doing thought leadership posts across the board, across every leadership account, on stuff like Twitter, and now we have to go a little bit harder on LinkedIn. We are doing gaming. So a mobile game of which we are, doing tons of back and forth with Gameloft, leading that charge. We are just getting into the weeds on episodic. We are doing physical products, plushies, collectible vinyls. Now merchandise is about to happen. We are exploring licensing deals. There are so many verticals, and we haven't even reached year 3. So the friction that comes with that, like if all we had done was build an animation studio,
yeah.
it would already be really difficult. But the fact that we're chasing like 10 different rabbits at the same time and managing to do it well, there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff that happens internally that people are not necessarily privy to, where it's like, hey, it's not always easy, and sometimes there might be drama, but the team is so close that I think that's the secret sauce. Like we call it like Navy SEALs because it kind of makes sense. Like everybody really pulls their weight, and you need
Yeah.
that because what we do is so difficult. And you never know if it's going to work out. Even when you have good days, the next day might be difficult because you've got people maybe complaining about the delay of the release of something on X or things like that. So this is always and of course we operate in the Web3 market, and that ecosystem is extremely volatile. The metas change, or the trends will change every 3 to 4 weeks, sometimes shorter than that, and sometimes you have to ride the wave of the crypto prices, because we sell our digital collectibles in crypto, so the price fluctuates all the time. So that causes extra friction. We've since kind of really finessed that, but in the beginning, that was for sure tough, like for sure.
Mm,
What does it mean for taxes? What does it mean for accounting? It's crazy, man. We've been so lucky. Like a lot of it has to do with our CEO, who's a really close friend of mine, who came in and had all these contacts and all this know-how. But we've set precedents in Canada for the way we do accounting in crypto and things like that. So pretty cool. Which is
yeah.
why now we're able to start really talking to other teams and think about how we're going to help them build their own brands in that ecosystem alongside us.
Yeah. You guys are like one big octopi.
Yeah, like Spectre, but not the evil kind.
Mm,
But yeah, it's been wild, but I think there's a lot. What's funny is I always it's always crazy that in movies they show this, but in like every movie about startups, they never show like, or they rarely show like all the shit that happens in between. Like it's always like, cool, they have a great idea and it's not easy, and then boom, like 5 years later, big
mm,
office. And I was like, what about all this in between
mhm,
stuff? Like the
mhm,
BlackBerry movie was awesome, but it's like they go from like, they're like really crappy office and a little bit of drama and uncertainty, and then they finally like build the BlackBerry, and then like it's like 3 years later, they're in this like super headquarters, or maybe it's like 5 or even 10 years later. I don't remember, but all of a sudden they're in this super big headquarters, and it's like they're on top of the world. And it's like, what? But what about all the interesting stuff that happened in between to get
mm.
to that place? And so I think movies have conditioned people to think that it's like, okay, you go from A to B, but it's like, no, it's like A.001, it's like all the in
Mm.
between that happens.
Yeah, I want to go a little bit before we give some advices for animators at the end. I
Yeah,
want to touch a little bit on the toy making process and
yeah,
what goes into negotiating a licensing deal for toys? Because in my mind, I always thought that you can produce and manufacture your own toys and just use a factory as a freelancer, basically. But
yeah.
actually, it's the other way around. You get royalties, and they do all the production and distribution. So I'm curious, you guys went with toy makers. Are they responsible for the plushies or other products?
So far, we've only worked with toy makers. And they've since become really close friends and at times advisors. They're super well connected. They've been doing toys forever. And since that adventure, we've been talking to companies like anybody from like Spin Master to like Mattel and those kinds of companies. But making toys and licensing. So our relationship with toy makers is very much they are a turnkey service that will communicate with the factories and all that stuff, which was
Mm-hmm.
really important when we didn't understand how to build this stuff.
Mm,
So they would come in and they would kind of coach us on how to do this stuff. And they would kind of take care of most of the lift. We would design the toys. So it was
mm-hmm.
really important for us to design the plushies and to give feedback. But basically what happens is you design, let's say, a plushie. So you do it in 2D and you show how you want this thing to look. Then and then you'll get questions about the materials, the softness, the how squishy you want it to be, all that kind of stuff. And then they'll start building at the factory and you'll receive like updates and then you can give feedback if the shapes aren't wrong, whatever. But at some point, that prototype, which doesn't have to be the exact color, it's just a physical prototype, um, is sent to you for approval. So you get to see it for the first time in real
Mm-hmm.
life, straight from the factory, and you're like, okay, I have another set of notes, or I'm super happy with this. Do it for real in the real color, and let's get it into real production. And that's one way of doing it, which is an amazing way. Licensing is something that you can entertain when your brand has more demand or more leverage, or there's a
Mm-hmm.
company that for whatever reason want to license the brand and they want to make, let's say for example, like if Squishmallows wants to like do Claynosaurz or whatever. Actually, I think with Squishmallows you approach them and you ask them, but the point is, if a company wants to license your brand, usually the deals could be different every single time, but the standard is like you say, is you do get royalties. They are not as big as anyone thinks they are. They're actually
Mm,
small. So in order to make a decent amount of money, you have to be selling millions of dollars worth of product,
mm,
because the percentage is really small. However, usually you get like a signing bonus. So the company will pay you to use your brand, and then uh, they I think there's like a recoup where you or them can recoup the money spent to build the product. So when you start selling the product, there's like a threshold where you recoup the money. And from that point on, you share royalties where maybe they keep 95% of the money and you keep 5% of every sale, for example. Like that's one way of doing it. There's a few different models. The reason why would you do this? Because doing it all yourself is a lot of work. And
yeah.
if someone is willing to do all the work and you can just sit there and make money from it, it's something to consider. If you're confident that they can sell at scale, or actually if they can do the marketing for you. So if you were to work with a company like Lego or Playmobil or Hasbro or Mattel, that has a lot of value add for your brand because it's actually amazing marketing, right? And so even if you anticipate not making so many on royalties, well, the value add is those companies doing a lot of marketing for your brand. So these are all considerations, but it's really two things: is yeah, you can do it all yourself, or you can find like a third party that can help you. Um, and then you can go through an agency, but you can license.
Mm. Do they
It's
do
really
the distribution part? Like, do they negotiate? Oh, Walmart, you're gonna take these toys and
That would be usually that would be again, you can kind of do it all yourself, but that would usually be through an agency.
uh-huh.
And that will then talk to all the distribution channels and distribute it for you. The unfortunate thing about agencies is they also take a big cut. So it's like if you can do it yourself, do it. But I think for a small creator, start with you know, don't do everything all at once. Start with like one to maybe three good products. And I see a lot of amazing creators do that, like Shark Kitty. Like I don't know if you follow Shark Kitty, but you should. Or is it Kitty Shark? I don't remember. It's either Kitty Shark or Shark Kitty, but what they do is incredible. And
Okay.
they basically they make their own plushies and they slowly release like new versions of it. And when they sell out, then they'll do another one. The thing to consider when you are making your own toys or your own plushies is you'll have to pay a certain amount. It's between sometimes it's between $1,000 to like $4,000 for the prototype. And then when you approve that, then you need to pay for the orders. So you can do a pre-order on social media, or you can buy the whole stock and have it in a warehouse somewhere. And then distribution is really difficult in the sense that there's a lot of logistics involved. So, and I would not recommend anybody doing that by themselves. Like, at first we kind of picked the hard way. But the best thing you can have is like a distribution center that takes care of, customer service, of sending out these things. But again, it really depends on what your resources are. If you're one person and you don't anticipate too much orders, then of course you can ship stuff yourself. But if you anticipate like over 1,000 orders, probably have the distribution center that's very close to the factory or something like that, like deal with it.
Am I right to assume that your main source of revenue are actually collectibles and then everything else are just bonuses? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So in a perfect world, they won't be just bonuses. And we actually do pretty well on the plushies. So far it's been a couple $100,000 on the plushies. A lot of it through limited SKUs or limited releases. But yeah, a lot of in our first couple of years, a lot of the revenue comes from the sale of digital collectibles and the royalties that we get when those collectibles trade. So in the first 2 years, we've made over, it's about $7 million on just royalties. So if you think about that, and the art, why is that powerful for small creators? Those digital collectibles live forever, and every time they trade between fans, for however much they trade for, you get a percentage of that, like no matter what. And as you, the creator, grow provenance or grow your brand, oftentimes those collectibles, grow in value as well because, well, people know you more. And so if you think of like an artist, like a painter, or maybe like an animator that's selling like digital animation collectibles, the more famous a painter gets, or the more in demand their paintings get, they don't see any kind of like extra reward or return for the fact that they kept working and their paintings got more and more expensive, because the old pieces that people got for really cheap and can now sell for a lot, they don't see royalties on the sale of those paintings. But the only reason that those paintings are selling for a lot is because that artist grew their fame. But imagine a world where you can really disrupt the gallery system, where every time that art exchanges hands, the artist gets a cut every single time. That is incredibly empowering. And we've been really lucky to see a lot of that through our collectibles. So sometimes, we've had some collectibles that have sold for just about $100,000, which is
Yeah,
nuts.
it's insane. I can't wrap my mind around it. Like a walk cycle that's worth $100,000.
It's nuts. But when I first got into NFTs, I realized, oh my God, like the fact that you can sell animation is so empowering. If you look up DK, and I'll give you his account, DEEKAY. He used to be a designer at I think like Meta and Google or Apple. So he was like a motion designer, and decided to build these short stories, these like very digestible, like animated character pieces. And he's probably one of the most historically the most successful like animator artists. Like some of his pieces have sold for about
Mm.
$1 million. It has changed his life. And I would kind of caution artists to not have an allergic reaction to that because it's incredibly empowering. And if painters can sell their works of art for that amount of money, why not an animator? Especially if you think of the value add as from a digital collectible or a digital painting. Um, if I'm able to display that on a high resolution screen in my office or in my living room or whatever, it's so much better that it moves and that it's animated. That's why I would have it up on a screen, like loops, things like that. And so something to consider. But yeah, sometimes these things go for a lot. But the point is, every time they they trade or they go up on a secondary auction or whatever, then ourselves as creators, we always get royalties, which allows us to continue to build our brand and empowers us to maintain status and continue to build basically.
Yeah, I remember like a couple of years ago, maybe I don't know, 2, 3 years ago, I was at Framestore working through Steamroller, and NFT was really booming then. And I remember one girl on your guys' side, Steamroller,
Carolina. Yeah,
Frame Carolina could be, yeah.
yeah,
She
yeah,
posted a couple of animations and sold them for like a couple of $1,000s or
yeah,
$100. I don't remember. But I was like, wow, these are like it's solid quality. Like it looks good, like something you could animate in a, I don't know, if you're a senior animator, maybe in a 2 weeks, maybe,
yeah.
and just post it.
Yeah, but think, yeah, yeah. So one, I mean, that was so good for Carolina. Like like she was so happy, and she was exploring Web3 with us more as like a fan of what we were doing when we were building Claynosaurz. But she made a lot of friends in the one-of-one art community
Hmm.
online that is exploring NFTs. And there's a lot of phenomenal artists. Like if you look at animators, look up Robbie Shilstone. Again, I'll give you that name, but phenomenal animator, does very like old school, like jazzy type animations in the style. I think it was like UPA. And he's done work for the MoMA and he's done music videos and he started to explore Web3 and it went really well for him. And we have a lot of friends that were like working at BioWare that were doing art on the side for free on Instagram and attempting to sell prints in person. Why not just sell the real digital piece online? And so that worked really well for Carolina at the time, and that was like awesome to see. Um, but I guess a mental exercise to do is like when you see, when you see like abstract art, like maybe something like a Picasso or a Jackson Pollock or whatever, right? Like sometimes there are pieces of art that look like they took no time to make. Now I
Mm.
understand that there's the thought process that goes behind it, but sometimes it looks like you took a paint bucket and you threw it on and now it's worth a couple $1,000s. Um, art has value for many different reasons. It is not just the work that goes into it. It's many things. And systematically since forever, it has always been that way. It's sometimes it's the way the artist injects themselves in society or in a certain group. Sometimes it's right time and place. There's so many different factors, but it's rarely just by virtue of the art being objectively good. I think there's always like a taste factor, but the point I'm trying to make is there's no right or wrong, and it's okay. And why not animators? For the first time ever in the history of like animation, um, an an artist can make a beautiful walk cycle and sell that walk cycle as a digital piece of art and only one of it exists. Now I get that you could kind of do the same, like, oh, I can sell like a Fortnite animation clip, but then you're not going to see like royalties every time this thing exchanges hand. And it's like, oh, I'm selling a cycle and thousands of people are going to buy the same cycle. But in the case of like being an artist, like you can do that. And it's incredible. And there's a lot of digital galleries that'll help you sell those pieces. they often take like maybe like a 0.5 or 1% cut of the initial sale, and that's it. And you still retain 5%, sometimes 10%. It really depends on what percentage you want. But I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but it's
Yeah.
incredibly, it's life changing for a lot of artists I've known. It's been super life changing.
Yeah, I see how this has a utility for someone who is just starting out, like learning animation, junior or entry level student. Like even when making simple exercises like ball bouncing or couple of simple walk cycle or something that moves, anything that you wanna put couple of keyframes and exercise, why not post it on Solana as well, just as you posted on LinkedIn, and just see what it feels like building some sort of mini brand and
Well, it's funny.
interacting with others.
Yeah, I think what's cool is like the way you just described it is, if I was an artist and that was the approach I did, and I was learning animation, why not every week, you do an exercise and you say, hey, I'm going to sell 100 pieces. And each of these pieces are going to represent my journey as I learn animation. And so you have a beautiful collection because the first couple pieces they're going to be rough. They're going to show like you
Yeah,
learn how to do these like bouncing balls and then maybe a rough walk and whatever. And by piece 100,
yeah,
you've better defined who you are as an animator. And it's then very interesting to collect the early pieces
yes.
when there was so many obstacles and it wasn't as clean, and I think that's super interesting. And for sure it's the artists have done that physically as well. Like watch me learn to paint and I'm going to sell all 100 pieces over time as I learn to paint
And imagine if you share the struggles while you were making it on socials. Then you
on
would
video
build, you,
100%.
I bet you would get a job faster that way. Not a Pixar job, but a job, a foot in the door, than applying to 100 companies and waiting for maybe one
Because
interview.
you stand out, 100%. I think you're right there because it also shows work ethic. It shows so many different things. It shows your ability
Yeah,
to build a personal brand. And I think over
consistency.
time, yeah, and I think over time, as content is heavily commoditized, taste and distribution become really important when the barriers of creation are kind of like torn down, right?
Yeah,
Which
like
is
imagine if you could buy early animations of Glen Keane. Like, oh man, I would buy that.
people would go nuts. I would
Yeah,
100%. I would like, yeah,
yeah,
and hit the nail on the head, which is why I'm kind of like trying to preach this whole idea that like, hey, like I know that there's sometimes a little bit of confusion or unclarity with like the idea of NFTs and Web3 and the idea of like digital ownership and digital art, but it's just a new distribution channel and it's just the internet with newer, better tools at your disposal.
yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, Nick, I think this is a beautiful way to end this whole series with some hope for animators watching. It's been really lovely and incredibly exciting watching your whole journey, and I can't wait to see more. I can't wait to see the game and play the game and see the
I
show.
hope you like it. I hope you like it. But yeah, we're super proud of where we are. And I know I've told you this before. Always happy to throw someone else into these podcasts and give you their story. Um, I think it would be really kind of cool to let creators know that, hey, if you're sitting on a really good idea for a brand or for an IP that you've been exploring, talk to us. Like, you can email me, you can email content at claynosaurz.com as well. But message us on LinkedIn, but we'll have a look at it. And the big picture here is to become an incubator for artists and a place that can foster new emerging brands, de-risk the whole process, and essentially king make artists. And that's the dream. And we feel like we're close to building a model that's pretty sustainable that can do that.